5 sessions so far. In fact, 4. We've had 4 sessions, and this is session number 5, where we're going to wrap it all up and bring it all home. All right? So this evening, we're going to touch on mentorship and how important it is to lead the next generation. Tonight, there are several topics that's going to be on the floor, and I promise it's going to be a very interesting evening in terms of the content that will be shared this evening. We're going to, first of all, give a recap on what has transpired so far. And so far, the first session was mental, where we had Mr. Ross Daniel come in and share on the spiritual aspect of man, some of the struggles that we do face mentally and internally, and how we go about conquering those challenges. We had that first session. Then we had the second session, which was entitled Wingmen, right? And then we also had the session where we had Mr. Marvelous from the Marvelous Motivations Gym come and speak to us about our health. And he spoke to us about our physical health and what we can do as men to ensure that our health is A1 every single time. After that session, we had the Wingmen session, where we had Mr. Junior DeLeese, who is a very well-known youth worker, come and speak to us about the challenges of working with young men in the communities. And that was a very enlightening session. He also shared his experience from the 𝐌𝐄𝐍𝐓 program, and that was very interesting to hear. We had also, for the last session, we had for 4 men, Mr. Kendall Elver joining us from Bellevue, who shared his experience as a social worker and a social transformation officer in his department. He really shared on the importance of men in communities and what is the role of men in communities and how they played a part in terms of achieving our goal. Now, this evening, we're going to have this session called Mentors. And most of us may have an idea what a mentor is, but we do know mentorship is important, and many persons have called for better mentors, especially in our neighborhoods, in our school environments. And mentorship is very important on many fronts. We do recognize the value of those mentors, and of course, we're going to speak about that this evening. But before we go into all of this, I would like to reintroduce myself again as Mr. Siobhan Bryan, and I do apologize for the late commencement. We do want to ensure that everything is in tip-top shape for you guys, because we are in queue for a very, very exciting discussion this evening. And of course, it is my honor today to welcome our special guest. And our special guest is Mr. Rowan Seon, affectionately known as Mr. Seon. Affectionately known, because formally.
That's formal.
Oh, formally, yes. Formally known as Mr. Seon. And I say affection because of the love from college boys, you know. And every college boy I know looks forward to tonight to hear what you have to say, and of course to enlighten us. And for those of you who may not know Mr. Seon, I know him as the former and for those of you who may not know Mr. College, Mr. Seon, I know him as the former and for those of you who may not know, yes, I know him as the former principal of St. Mary's College, and he was the principal during my attendance, and he has been a long-standing educator. He's also well acquainted within cultural circles, heavily involved in the arts, the written arts, the visual arts, as well as the performing arts. He takes a very keen interest in the progress and development of St. Lucia in many aspects, especially when it comes to education. And I know his input is more than valuable this evening. And we're all excited to hear from Mr. Seon. So I would like to officially welcome you, Mr. Seon, to management. Welcome. It's my pleasure to have you, sir. And of course, I would like to welcome you again to the audience by telling them who is Mr. Seon.
Let me first say how pleased I am to be here, Siobhan. You're a graduate of St. Mary's College class of 2010.
Yes.
I must say these are some of the most memorable years at St. Mary's for me. That period around that time, all kinds of things are happening of a positive nature, and you were part of that. And I can see you have grown to a significant level in those 15 years since you've left school. And I'm very, very proud to see the sort of contribution you're making to St. Lucia. I mean, as we discussed even before we went on air, not many young men or even older men have seen the necessity to keep in contact with other men around and given us a forum to express ourselves. And this is a wonderful effort you're making here. And I wish you all the best as you continue to go along.
Thank you, sir.
Right. Now, having said that, Mr.
Yes.
Seon, well, I guess you would know me from the school. I spent most of my years at St. Mary's College, my working years, after having been there as a student before that. So there's a lot of SMC years for me.
Yeah.
As you know, I started as a regular teacher, then I became vice principal. It's about 10 years as a regular teacher, then about 12 years as vice principal, and then 15 years as principal. So that's, you can add that up, that's 37 years.
Wow.
So that's a significant slice of my life.
Yeah.
And I dealt with boys there and all those adolescent boys, 11 to 17 or 18. And I think I'm fairly well placed to give my opinion and my perspective on issues affecting young men in the society. Because the boys who I started teaching, imagine that, those who I started teaching in the early 80s are now in the 50s years old. Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Late 55, 56, and these are the guys who are around the place now and making decisions and running the country. And, you know, and I would have known them from the time they were young men.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I think it's very important that they link up with persons like me who've been around and who may have something to say. So I must applaud you for this effort. I didn't ask to be here. You invited me to come here.
Yes.
And I'm very, very pleased that you found the necessity to invite me over.
Yes. I'm very pleased by your presence because even as a student, I can attest to your direct and indirect influence in my tenure at St. Mary's, because I know, and I can speak for the guys who were in the years alongside me, before me and after me, that, you know, your presence really shifted things. You know, boys, they always say boys will be boys, but then when you hear that talk, talk, talk coming down the hall, everything organized itself in a way that, you know, we can sit here and laugh about it, but we realize how important it was for our behavior. It taught us discipline, it taught us structure, it taught us order, authority and order.
Yes.
And on that note, I would like to ask you, in your experience as an educator, what would you say are the essential ingredients for a successful student? And I know success can be interpreted in several ways. But what would you say are your ingredients to get a child from, you know, that critical stage where they're in primary school and they may be a bit rowdy to the end of the line when they're graduated and they're ready to take on life's decisions?
Well, I think you first have to define what you mean by, as you say, by success. And I think the three qualities that we look for at St. Mary's, and I'm sure they still do now, is to have a young man who has developed intellectually, in terms of his personality and his personal character, and of course, his socialization, ability to deal with others. These are the three major areas. And we'd add, of course, there are always the Christian values, which work into the character thing as well. St. Mary's College, as you know, it's a Roman Catholic institution, very strong Christian values.
Yeah.
And we think that is an important aspect of guiding us along through society. So we look to ensure that, of course, you emerge from the school and able to hold your own in any sort of intellectual setting, in any sort of academic company. Clearly, that's very important. But we want you to be able to carry yourself with pride and dignity, and to ensure that people can see, hey, that's the college boy. From the time he walks into a room, that's the kind of thing we try to instill into you. You will recall when students enter the school in Form 1, from the very first day in Form 1, we tell them that you're no longer at any other school but St. Mary's College. You're in the very best school in the world. And understand that you have a very high level of responsibility once you get here. Yeah. You know, we consider that little things make a big difference. I don't know if you will remember, and I'm sure the boys listening on air will recall that we used to make a big fuss about the socks you wear. White shoes, black pants, black socks. We kept 40 or 50 pairs of socks in the office at all times. Oh. So if you came with white socks, or you came with brown socks, or no socks, you get a pair of socks, $5. Maybe you never even knew that because you had the proper socks.
Always had the good socks.
Yes, yes. And you know, but parents would ask, but Mrs. Seon, is that just the socks? Yeah. Yes, the socks today, and it'll be a gun tomorrow. It doesn't start with guns. Mm-hmm. Those running around the street shooting now didn't start with guns. The little things develop and they affect your character as you go along the way. Mm-hmm. So if you nip little things in the bud, you have a better society tomorrow. And these are the kind of things that we stand for the school. A lot has happened at St. Mary's that keeps me up at night. Some, you know, these things about the hairstyle and allowing boys putting pressure on the school. Yeah. When the principal of the school attempts to do something about it, everybody's up in arms. Yeah. Let the boys get ahead. Your hair doesn't make you learn, and that kind of stuff. But that is absolute nonsense, because the discipline it takes to keep your hair under control is the same discipline it'll take to make you get your exams through correctly, and the same discipline that will keep the society together. People think that so you don't need to have well-groomed hair to pass your CXC exams, but the school is not about just passing CXC exams. We're preparing young men for the society, young men that are supposed to guide this country through, and we have to maintain our standards in every aspect of development. Passing exams is just 1/3 of what a school is about. Mm-hmm. Your character, your dignity, your integrity is a very important part of it as well. And then how you deal with others is extremely important too. So that's why we would harbor and harp on very, very small things to ensure that we do have to deal with the big things further down the road. So we focus on these things at the school, and we ensure that students are made aware that little things matter. Throw in a little scrap of paper on the floor, you're going to pick it up. Yeah. It's just a small piece, but tomorrow it'll be a bottle, and the next day the rivers will be blocked. That's the way it goes. You deal with the small problems, and the big problems take care of themselves.
Okay, very, very interesting. So you're saying there's more or less like a ripple effect where you have to nip it at the bud before.
Absolutely correct. And if you start in Form 1, Form 5 becomes easy, because that's like the beginning of what could be a problem or could be a solution. Yeah. And once you get them very early, then later on it becomes a walk in the park.
Understandably so. So you speak about an aspect of education that is constant, but what we do know is that in education, a lot of things change over time.
Yes.
And one of those things that change would be the way that we learn. And I think particularly in the last 10 years, there's been a very heavy emphasis on the smart classrooms, where children have access to devices and smartphones, where they even use those devices in the classroom. What would you say is the impact of such a change? Like, because in your 37 years as an educator, what would you say has been the impact of those smart devices in the classrooms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I can even go a little further back. While I was at St. Mary's myself,
Yeah.
I remember distinctly it was around Form 3 when handheld calculators became the thing.
Oh, wow.
Imagine that. When I went to Form 1, we didn't have calculators, you know. You expected to use the traditional methods of calculating your brain.
Mm-hmm.
And then these smart calculators, quote unquote, became available. And people are wondering, my God, that's going to ruin education.
Yeah.
How can children use calculators? And so, of course, society adjusted.
Mm-hmm.
We adjusted because it's the reality.
Yeah.
You can't stop people from using calculators and have calculators out there.
Yeah.
Well, the same thing goes for our smart devices now. The smart devices are indeed a part of reality.
Mm-hmm.
The schools are going to have to adjust methods of teaching, methods of learning, and most importantly, methods of examining students. Examination structures will have to change to deal with these changes that are coming in, because you're not going to be able to fight them.
Yeah.
You're preparing persons for the real world. You're not preparing them for some artificial world from 50 years ago. They're going to go into the world now where they have all of these online services available, AI and all of these things.
Yeah.
You ask people to prepare essays now. Well, maybe a couple of years ago, you could have tracked down the essays to know whether it's done by AI or done by the student, but it's getting more and more difficult now. There's so many different AI sources now.
Yeah.
They're replicating faster than people can keep checking them. Wow. So it's going to be almost impossible to know when something is done by the student himself or done by an AI source. So what's going to have to happen, the way I see it, teaching methodologies are going to, modalities are going to have to take that into account. And in addition, assessment of students, examinations will have to take that into account. So it'll be no point asking a student to write an essay and submit it for marking if you're not sure of the student writing the essay. Mm-hmm. But what you can do, he writes the essay, then he comes and presents it to the class. So even if he's not written it, he has to incorporate it into his head, understand it appropriately, and stand in front of the class and present it. Mm-hmm. And you marked on your presentation rather than on the submission of paper. I think that's what's going to happen. We're going to get more hands-on education where students become more involved in what they do, and less of the research aspect of it is going to be required for assessment. Mm, okay. That's how I look at it, and we should encourage the use of the smart devices. The smart devices are with us. You can certainly keep them back and pretend they're not there. Yeah. Because they're there anyway. Yeah. We have to incorporate it into the classroom and still have assessments based on students' presentation. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah. So rather than you submit the paper, you present the work, yeah, and you show me that not only have you, even if you didn't write it yourself, you understood it adequately, you present it, and then you can be questioned on it, and you get marked based on your presentations. Yeah.
That's very interesting. Yeah, because what I do notice is that the smart devices that is across the board. It's not just with males, it's with females in all schools. And I want to zero in closer to the male aspect of learning, what we experience. Because in my tenure at SMC, I recall, for example, discipline. Discipline was a very important part of school. And there were certain things we could not do because they would call us to the bench. And, and when we got called to the bench, we knew it was one of two things. The likeliness of you going in the office was high, and the likeliness of you leaving that bench was low. But it was a gamble that a lot of us face. Right. Now, with the abolishment of corporal punishment, that is no more. Maybe you do get called to the bench, but
to what end?
To what end, exactly. Mm. So do you think that the abolition of corporal punishment has had is a contributing factor to degenerate behavior, what we would consider students acting out and doing certain activities?
Yeah, I want to talk about that a little bit because You know, corporal punishment is never a very easy topic to discuss. Some people see it as barbaric, where the fact that you raise a rod and you strike somebody to cause them to change their behavior is an unintelligent way of dealing with problems. There's a solid argument in that direction, but there are a number of other issues to be considered. You will know the way we did corporal punishment at St. Mary's College. And I just want to add quickly that there's certainly places and persons who abused it, where it was done completely inappropriately, where students could have been treated with violence and all sorts of things on the grounds of corporal punishment. But I think students who attended St. Mary's College will agree that the methods there were nothing like that. You mentioned yourself that sitting on the bench was part of the process.
Yeah.
And there were many boys who sat on the bench and never got punished. And you know why? The fear of the punishment is punishment itself. The corporal punishment works at two levels. You administer the corporal punishment, and then you have in the minds of those the fear that they may get it, and that in fact can cause an adjustment of behavior. Many boys, you see, when you have a school of 700 boys, for God's sake, 700 boys in a confined environment can be a very chaotic situation if not managed. You need methods, you need strategies to deal with them. One of the methods is having what you may call instantaneous responses to situations. There are problems that you have that you do not want to defer to later. Because, you know, they say punishment deferred is correction averted, something like that. I don't know the exact words. But it means to say that if somebody does something now and you punish them later, they may not even know what you punish them for. Yeah. And the corrective action may not be taken at all. On the other hand, if some young man stands in the class and uses foul language and he's sent to the office for punishment, and then he's dealt with immediately, he knows exactly what it is he did. You feel the consequences of it immediately, and it can cause a correction in behavior. I think that as much as you want to minimize the use of corporal punishment, it has its occasion, it has its time, and it has its place where it can be effective. Yeah. Once it's not abused, once it is not taken for granted, once it is utilized at a level that considers the consequences of what you do at all levels, then it can be used. However, I recognize too that it can be easily abused. And perhaps the wisdom of the powers that be in St. Lucia, they recognize there were more cases of abuse than effective use. And so it is terminated, which is unfortunate. I think it has had an effect on the behavior of persons who otherwise may have been corrected, given its availability, and left the school uncorrected, maybe going out there to continue behaviors that is now affecting the whole society. That's what I believe. Had we kept this particular method of dealing with a problem, this modality, it could have had a positive consequence on society. Okay. I just want to add something here. Yeah. That when the decision is made to abolish the corporal punishment, I would have liked to have seen a little more consultation taking place with persons like myself and a number of other past principals who are there. I mean, the Minister of Education, in his wisdom, had indicated to me at some point that he would put in place a kind of a think tank. Well, he didn't use those words, but I think that's what he meant. Yeah. Past principals who he could consult when situations arise. Because, I mean, I spent 37 years in the school. Somebody like Terence Fellow spent almost as much time. There was Rupert Ellis. If the three persons, like just these three, for instance, sit in a room, that's over 100 years of experience in the school. And imagine if you consult us for issues and you ask us for a recommendation and a course of action. the kind of wisdom that you have available at your disposal that's not being used. I think it's really a shame that the Ministry of Education is not utilizing the wisdom of past principals. I just called 3, but there are many others all over the place who can contribute significantly to decision-making in education. There's nobody in the Ministry of Education, no expert in the Ministry of Education who knows St. Mary's College like me. None of them. And there's no expert who probably knows the Babano School like Mr. Fellow, and who knew the hair school like Mr. Ellis. And persons like that, we can make decisions. I mean, it is, Sister Rufina has just left the convent. She can become a consultant on issues affecting the school as well. But we just being allowed to rusticate and disappear gradually, and the wisdom has been wasted. Yeah, it's really a shame, because I'm sure if we had been that approached on something like the corporal punishment, we would have at least advised you can institute laws to restrict its use, but keep it on the books. So principals have it to use as a recourse if absolutely necessary. And it's the same thing, I dare say, with this thing about the capital punishment in society. Mm-hmm. Nobody wants to be hanging people helter-skelter, but there are situations where capital punishment may be the solution to certain problems. No, we're just adopting, you see, we're adopting the dictates of North America into our schools in an environment that is completely different to North America. This thing about corporal punishment and capital punishment being abolished, that came down from there, you know. The US. It didn't originate here. All these international agencies of the UN and so on, telling the government they have to stop this and stop that. But they're not telling the government what to do about the problems that we had in the first place. Because when boys misbehave in the school, and we would have dealt with it using corporal punishment, there's nothing in place now to replace the corporal punishment. Nothing. The alternative is to send them home on suspension. Now imagine that. Yeah. A boy misbehaves in the school, he stands up and uses foul language in the presence of the teacher. You could deal with that in the 20 seconds, send him to the office, 4 or 5 strokes, back to the classroom, continue learning. But now they send him home for 2 days and he learns nothing for the 2 days because he's not in the classroom. What is more wicked punishment to the boy? 6 strokes of a cane or 3 days at home learning nothing? That's the kind of thing you have to discuss and consider. You see? Because now all the principals have is suspension. And suspension is far more damaging to a young man than 3 or 4 or 5 strokes of a cane. And I can tell you that. I know that for a fact. I was very reluctant to suspend students. Extremely reluctant. You send them home and they end up on the streets. Yeah. God knows what happens to them when they're at home. There's nobody supervising them, parents at work. So you don't just abolish corporal punishment and then you tie the hands of the principals. They have no recourse now because students are now behaving worse. Because not only are they still doing what they did before, but if they can do it now with impunity, knowing that nothing can happen to them, you know, they realize that the suspension thing is probably a holiday for them. So they act up. I know teachers have had to leave classrooms and all sorts of things because it's difficult to manage students without this recourse that principals had. Because nobody likes pain. Pain causes adjustments in behavior. Yeah, it does. You see, you put your hand in fire, you never put your hand in fire again because it's going to pain you when you get burnt. Yeah. And that's really what the corporal punishment was about. It was not about abuse, it was about correction. And now you have to have some corrective methods when students misbehave in the school. Because you know, yeah, Siobhan, a classroom of 30 boys or girls can be a difficult management situation. When one boy is misbehaving in that class, the other 29 are suffering. And you do not have time to tell him stop and stop and stop. He's got to leave the room. And if he leaves the room and stands outside, he wanders around the school.
Yeah.
You've got to deal with him and bring him back into the classroom so he can learn. To the office, a quick fix, back to the class. That's what the school functioned for 150 years, well, almost 150 years.
Yeah.
And then they just came in and stopped it. You see, and now I'm very concerned how Mr. Fontenelle is dealing with problems there now, because he's going to be having, he's always going to have problems. Boys will always misbehave, and you're going to have to deal with them. And I suspect the suspension thing is going to be the only weapon that the principal has to deal with recalcitrant students. And there will always be recalcitrant students. Even at seminaries where the boys are supposed to be focused on the schoolwork, there are those who are going to come and fool around in the school, and you have to deal with them because the others are going to suffer. Yeah. There have to be measures in place to deal with persons who misbehave, and you have to deal with them instantaneously so they know why they're being corrected. You can't deal with it next week, but by then they've forgotten. By then they may have done so many good things already.
Yeah.
They wonder, how come I was such a good boy for the last 4 days and you're still punishing me? You have to do it right away.
Yeah. Understand.
I talk about this all night, you know, this issue alone. Anyway, let's go ahead.
That's exactly what we want. We want the more or less the attention to be on how do we deal with that, because that was actually my next question. There has been several reports across the island, teachers having to sometimes just abruptly end their lesson and just walk out of the class. How do, because you're an educator still, having teaching, well, you are still teaching students.
Yeah.
How do educators now deal with this situation where they cannot exercise that corporal punishment, but yet they are expected to deliver in the face of parents with high expectations? How are teachers coping with this reality?
And parents looking to take schools to court and all kinds of strange things like that we adopt them from North America. All of the foolishness that may have nothing in place here. There are no safety nets for anybody, and we want to adopt the American attitudes of all kinds of things. It's a lopsided society we have now. And we've seen what's going on with the kind of behaviors on the streets. Look what happened a couple of days ago, people getting shot right on Derek Walker Square. I mean, we are reaping the harvest of a very liberal structure in our education system. A liberal structure that has no safeguards, no safety nets for anybody. Teachers walk out of rooms because they probably feel insecure in the rooms now.
Yeah.
There's no, you know, sadly enough, we used to always tell students and tell teachers never abandon the classroom because that's their turf. They're in charge of the class. The student leaves, not them. But then in those days, they send the student to the office. I don't know what they're going to do now because they send to the student. What does the principal do when the student comes to the office? Give them a lecture and so on. I mean, you have to be able to correct people effectively. And sending them home on suspension is not the ideal solution to the problem. I feel very strongly about that. You send them home and they end up, there's no parental guidance at home. They end up on the road. And that's where the problem starts. Then you come back twice as bad the next day because they come back with all kinds of ideas to pick up from the boys on the block.
Yeah.
You see. So you have to deal with them in the school. The school has to have a structure in place. You suspend them and you put them in a room in the school and they don't learn because they're not part of the classroom anymore. The class continues without them. The math class continues and they're not part of it. I've seen in my years in that school at St. Mary's College, boys come to the office, I talk to them, I tell them why they're being punished. We don't fight with any boy to be caned. I mean, you know that. By which the college boys look, we never fought with anybody. If you do not agree to be caned, then I call your parents in. and explain to the parents. And the parents tell you, you're going to have to, because they know why we do it.
Yeah.
You don't just cane haphazardly because you feel like caning.
Yeah.
There are times when 2 weeks would pass in the school and nobody get caned. It is a matter of a situation, specific types of offenses lead to that consequence.
Yeah.
You have a book with the code of conduct for the school, and it is clear to you, certain behaviors have consequences. There are detentions, there are different things, but they're more severe infractions of the rule that have more severe consequences. And that's the way society works. We're preparing you for life. We're not preparing you for some mushy world out there that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
You go out there and you commit a crime, there'll be consequences for your crime. And school has to be at least a mirror of that, a microcosm of the society. So that's what the punishment was about. Within this good health culture, because you felt like caning. And then, and now, without a recourse, teachers, I can understand, get frustrated in the room. And I suspect that students now realizing that that's not going to happen, do a little more than they would have done normally. I haven't been in the classrooms in the school since that has happened. Mm-hmm. Had I been principal still, I would have been up in arms about it, believe me. Now, I just want to add one thing about the direction of the education for boys and all that, which you mentioned. That I think one of the problems we've had here is the fact that, you mentioned learning styles, different learning styles, and different learning styles is a significant factor that we don't really take into account. Boys and girls don't quite do it the same way in terms of learning. Boys tend to be more visual and more kinesthetics, using their hands. Yeah. They deal with that kind of thing. They have the 4 styles. They talk about the visual, the auditory, the reading and writing, and the kinesthetics, which is hands-on. Yeah. Boys tend to be visual and kinesthetics. Girls tend to be more reading and writing and more auditory. So they will sit in a room and they'll be able to function in the classroom for an hour and a half, no problem. Boys tend to get a little more restless, tend to want to move around more, and they need to be more challenged with physical things. Mm-hmm. So I think one problem we've had in the past, which has led to all kinds of societal issues, is the fact that the male students in our schools have been subjected to environments that have been hostile to their character. They've been asked to sit down in the classroom and do work for 3, 4, 5 hours consecutively. Mm-hmm. And many boys can't handle that. They get restless, they switch off, they misbehave, because that's not their style of learning. Many boys, some of them are a little more versatile in the learning, but many of them are at the end of the spectrum where they're just hands-on, which is why I think that school has opened at Marigot, mm-hmm. the new institution there, the IT school there. Yeah. It's a wonderful idea. Wonderful idea. I think that's going to be one of the saving graces for this society. In a couple of years, we'll probably see that. Because the boys who are there and who get the opportunity to learn by the kinesthetic methods, the hands-on methods, would have been boys who would have been in regular schools being frustrated. You see what I mean? Yeah. They can't deal with the classroom environment, sitting down for 3 hours, maths on the board and having to learn maths. That's not quite how they learn. Everybody learns a different way. And that environment is more for them. So those who may have dropped out from secondary schools because they're frustrated now may remain in that school and learn the plumbing, learn the electrical installation, these things that can bring a lot of money anyway, and give them a gainful life after school will be the saving grace for this nation. And I think that was a wonderful idea. And that will perhaps, we won't see it yet, maybe 5 years from now, when we see that there's a diminution in the crime and all of that, we can attribute it to that institution and that type of thing. Because right now, A lot of these guys were there who were on these bikes shooting people and all kinds of things. Are boys who were in school too, you know, Siobhan. They were in school 10 years ago, sitting down in a classroom, and now they're shooting people on the street. Frustration drives them to this kind of thing, maybe. Yeah. They didn't learn anything much at school. They were not happy at school. They probably dropped out in Form 2 or Form 1 and went to the other school on the block. That's where they learned. If you can keep them in place and let them graduate and with some pride and belief in themselves, there will be no need to go on the block. And that is the way, because all of them have been frustrated into CXC exams when they were not interested in that. Their learning style did not allow them to sit down and write essays and that sort of thing, because they were hands-on learners. There's nothing wrong with that. They're different people, different styles. You see? Yeah. You give a boy, you put him in front of an engine for a vehicle, and there's a master mechanic there, and he stands and he watches the master mechanics. And in about an hour or two, he can do what the mechanic does. Yeah. And give it to another one who can write essays, and he won't know where to start on that engine. People learn differently. And we have to understand that for many years, we've been forcing our young men to learn in a style in school that was hostile to their character and their personalities. And it ended up frustrating them out of school and onto the streets. So finally, we're starting to get that right. We're starting to get that right. And I was very happy to know about that. And I think we're perhaps going to need another type of school like that to keep more of them off the streets, to ensure that we can get our young men who are just as intelligent as anybody else, but learning by a different modality to get into an institution of some benefit to them.
Oh, wonderful. Because you actually did 2 in 1, because that was actually my next question, to really address the differences between teaching boys and teaching perhaps all girls or a mixed classroom, because you would have been with the institution for roughly 37 years that you said. Yeah. And I would have wanted to know the difference, but I think you touched on that greatly. One of the aspects I want to touch on is in response to what you said. You mentioned the benefit of the technical incorporation in schools. As the former principal and educator at St. Mary's, we know that majority of the subjects offered at that institution were outside of the technical spectrum. How did you navigate this? I wouldn't say this new reality, because you seem well versed in it. How did you navigate the challenges of teaching boys who may be gifted technically in a purely academic institution?
Wonderful, wonderful question. And you see, that is always an issue, because we recognize your boys like that in the school. Consequently, we brought in IT, there's PE, there's certain little aspects of it. Now, I just want to make a point. We've always had comprehensive schools, you know. There are many schools in San Lucia who are comprehensive. Yeah. So it's not to say we've been ignoring IT education, but the challenge has been a boy who is at the end of the spectrum for the kinesthetic type learning, for learning, hands-on learning, would find himself disadvantaged even in a comprehensive school. Because in a comprehensive school, where you have the range of subjects, like Castries Comprehensive School, there's a range of subjects there. There are those who do the chemistry and the physics and the biology, and those who do the other, the woods and the auto mechanics and so on. And there's always a subtle distinction between them, where those who do the academic subjects are considered to be a cut above the others, and that kind of artificial thing that is really nonsense. Yeah. I think in an environment where the focus is on the kinesthetics learning, their hands-on learning, then it is the comfortable place to be for them. And these persons who are in that school will be far more likely to express themselves with full-fledged involvement, knowing that everybody in that school is doing that kind of learning process. There's no better and no worse. They're all doing that thing. And if you much, so you come in there 8:30 in the morning, you leave at 4 o'clock, and you're comfortable in your environment. You don't have to cope with those who are doing the physics and chemistry and want to look at you and treat you as if you're a lesser person because you're not doing physics and chemistry. Yeah. You are in your environment where you live. And I think that has been part of the problem. Yeah. What encourages persons not to embrace the subjects fully, still not do as well as they can, still not commit themselves fully, is the discomfort in the structure of the environment. And I'm glad that we're realizing that the IT format is ideal for some persons. You can throw in a little math, a little English, but the focus has to be on the IT, which is what that school is about. Yeah. Now, at St. Mary's, what we notice, you know, most of the boys who, 99% of the boys who came there were those who inclined to this learning styles of reading and writing, yeah, of listening, some visual as well, but not many to incline to the end of the kinesthetic end where you have hands-on. So we didn't have to deal with that at any particular level, but I can well imagine that problem will exist in that environments where you get both types. For instance, in the school, the Vieux-Fort School is an interesting institution in that regard. Okay. And I always have to tip my hat to them because they have a variety of learning styles in that school. It's a school that kind of, well, for years anyway, I think it's kind of changed now, yeah, but they captured all the persons from the southern end of the island, and those who were extremely inclined to the learning styles of the reading and writing, of the listening kind of thing, and those that were inclined to the hands-on learning as well. And they're all in the same environment. So it's something that you must be aware of. I mean, the institutions in the world where the first thing they do is to assess a student to find out what his ideal learning style is, you see, and to cater for him. He should get in an environment that caters for the way he wants to learn, not force him to learn the way the school is teaching, because then he'll never be happy. And then he's going to be leaving the school frustrated, going out in the street to grab people's bags and to hold them up for guns and so on, because he had 5 unhappy years at school. And so it's a very important aspect of development. We are seeing a lot of young men now who are ostracized out there from society because they had a very bad experience at school. You see, it is the home as well, indeed, but you must, as educators, recognize the school is part of the problem. And it's not because of the teachers or because of the principal, but because of the structure of the school system, where you have persons being square pegs, educational pegs, being asked to fit into the round holes of the classroom that they're put into. And that's not where they're happy. A lot of them drop out Form 2 and never reach Form 3. You know, we didn't have that much at our school, as you know, but it happens a lot of the schools. They just stop coming, or they come twice a week. And the other 3 days, God knows where they are. And then you hear somebody get stabbed, and there's one of them. You see, that's part of it. You must have an environment that's welcoming and comfortable for the young men in particular. Make them feel that the school is offering something they are interested in. There are a number of skills that these guys can learn and master and do very well. I understand they're teaching them to do barbering at the school in Marigold. But I mean, that is such a wonderful thing. I don't mind learning that myself, because you can always be a barber while you're still doing something else. You can cut people's hair Saturday and Sunday and work Monday and Friday. You know how well you can do if you get these skills? They don't have time to go on the road and attack people if they learn these skills, because they have something to do with their time. You see, a lot of them they left school and have nothing. They fail the CXCs, nothing to show for the 5 years of school. What they're going to do? They join the gang and they shoot for the money. What kind of professional guys here now shooting people for money, you know? You know, that's what's going on there now? Assassins. And I mean, it's a frightening thing. But that's what the consequences of not catering for persons in the educational environment. And this is something that we're going to have to continue to deal with. They have one or two little steps, like I mentioned, but they have much more work to do in that area. Yeah. And that's where the problem is for crime. Crime is not going to be solved by the police. Crime has to be solved by dealing with the issues facing the young men in this country. That's where you're going to solve the crime. Okay, you may arrest one. Every time you arrest one, two more come up. People are saying, people say strange things. When you hear these guys get shot, yeah, other people say, well, let them kill each other. And then get you nonsense like that. Yeah. They kill one and five more come out the next day. Yeah. You're not going to retribution. You're not going to stop. You're not going to kill them out. Yeah. It's making space for others to come in. You have to stop it from the roots, from the bottom. That's coming up from the bottom. And the bottom is that all of these young men were in primary school for 5 years. And they went to secondary schools, many of them, because most people go to secondary schools now. Yeah. And then they drop out in Form 1, Form 2, Form 3, because they're not interested in what we tell them there. They don't want to hear about no POB and no SS and these things. They want something that they can see will be a benefit to them. Yeah. And let us provide that we can keep them in the schools. While they come into school, we can teach them other little things. Yeah. About characters, about pride, but you must have them in the school, captured audiences in the school, to learn the other soft skills that allow them to develop as young men. You see, if you can keep them for 5 years, yeah, chances are they wouldn't end up in that state. Yeah.
That's very, very interesting feedback. And just before we go into our next point, I just want to tell our audience that there will be a question and answer segment, but you can all feel free to engage in the chat, especially those who are live on Facebook. You can engage in the chat, and those in the Zoom room, you can also engage in the chat. When the question and answer segment is on, you will be allowed to unmute your mic and give your contribution.
Is that a question?
Yes, well, we do have some comments coming in, so let me just pop out the first comment for you. So we have a comment from Chelsea. Chelsea is saying, and it's right here, it's on the Ministry of Education seeking assistance from the expert. I would suggest all of you guys have a session speaking out on issues like this and more.
Well, there you go. Well, see, this is perhaps the reason why I'm here now. I feel very, very sorry that the ministry officials have not seen the necessity. I'm saying so as clearly as I can. And I hope the Minister of Education, Mr. Sean Edwards, who's my past student from St. Mary's College, is hearing this. Mr. Sean Edwards, I'm speaking to you directly. There are persons who can assist the educational process in St. Lucia. There are past principals who are sitting at the home, getting rusty. There are people like Ms. Lyra Pascal, who worked at Sir Aris Simmons for years and worked wonders there. There's Mr. Terence Fellenlaw, who has just left the Babonneau School. Mr. Rupert Ellis, who transformed the hair school into what it is now after it had a difficult beginning. Well, your humble servant, I'm here as well. There's Sister Rufina, who has left the convent. There are a lot of people who can contribute to help solve the problems in this society, because these problems begin with school-aged boys. These persons who are misbehaving on the street are not grown men. Most of them are 18, 19, 20, 21. These are boys who were in school not so long ago. And we are the ones who dealt with them in school. You have to consult us. The combined knowledge of the past principals is 1,000 times more than anybody in the Ministry of Education. There's no permanent secretary, no chief education officer, nobody in the ministry who knows more about the schools than the principals who just left the schools and are still fully able to discuss these matters. We are not senile. We have no Alzheimer's. We are very able to discuss problems and to come up with solutions. Use this resource. We are being wasted. We do not have to pay us if we don't have money. A lot of, well, I'm not going to say that for everybody. I mean, let me take that back. I mean, you know, some people have to eat. However, that's not the focus. The focus is provision of advice to the Ministry of Education to help solve the problems that are facing us. Well, no, I heard Mr. Hiller making the statement yesterday as to the governmental response to the shooting on the square. But you know, that problem didn't start on the square. These shooters probably are not any much older than early 20s. They were in school 5 years ago, sitting in a classroom, and we didn't deal with it then. Thank you very much.
Right. Okay, and we have some more comments coming in the chat. There's another one that says that same Chelsea, there should be a lot more mentorship programs to the youth disposal, in my opinion. And for orientation, they can allow teachers to have students complete VAC questionnaires to know their learning styles before enrolling.
Absolutely, very good idea. And that's what's done in institutions around the world. You know. All these schools, the US schools that we want to copy, and when we ban corporal punishment and these kinds of things, we copy the schools for banning corporal punishment. We're not copying the positive things about the schools. Huh? These are the things they do. They find out about the learning styles of the children and put them in an institution that suits them.
Yeah.
You see? You have to do these kinds of things. You don't just come and say, pass a law, boys can have their hair any way they want. If there's no problem, then token them and then expect to have a better society.
Yeah.
You see, you can't just be so liberal in a society. You have no safety nets for anybody. The teachers are getting frustrated. The classrooms are getting difficult to manage because we just letting them do what they want. Young men will do as much as we allow them to. Chevron, you know that.
Yep.
They'll do as much as you allow them to, but they want structure.
Yeah.
They want to know their structure. The older people are the ones who believe that they want to wear their hair anyway. If you tell these boys and you insist they cut their hair, you know.
Yeah.
You have to insist, and they'll be fine. They can grow their hair however long after they leave school. Grow it down to the ground if they want.
Yeah.
And all we ask too is to have a certain degree of respect for the school. Yeah. We had rastas at St. Mary's College. We had boys with locks reaching as far as their knees, but they kept it under the tam, and there's no problem. I can call the name of a young man, I'm sure you wouldn't mind. Remember Irel Brantford? Irel spent 5 years in the school. The boys didn't even know the length of his locks. The guy was so respectful for the school's regulations.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody asked him to cut his hair. He used to play, you know, one time he used to play football for the school.
Yeah.
And he used to tell me how he prefers to play football with his hair free so you can head the ball and things like that. I told him, fine. You're on the field playing, you can take off your hair there and play. But when you get back to the classroom, when you have your school uniform, all of that, you put the time on and you agreed.
Yeah.
And that's how there's no problem with a respectful regard for the rules of the school.
Yeah.
You want to have your hair, keep it covered. But now I see the hair all over the place. Nobody says anything to anybody anymore, and it's all fine to do anything. Have you noticed that many of these boys who get involved in this misbehavior, when you see them shot on the ground, a lot of them have these little locks in their hair. These are not rastas, you know. Mm-hmm. That's just locks. These little flashy locks, the kind of thing the boys do because they don't have the discipline to keep themselves otherwise. Yeah. We're not talking about rastas. Rastas are respectful boys who conduct themselves within the confines of the religion. Yeah. So nobody's saying you cut your hair just because the school says. We say we have your hair within the confines of the school regulations. And the school accommodates rastas very well. We have several at the school who had their full locks of their hair, but they kept it covered. So we work together. Yeah. But now I've seen boys who just have hair for the sake of hair because they want to grow it big. Because the parents tell them is don't cut your hair because the school can't tell you to grow your hair. But the nonsense like your hair does not determine how you learn. Learn what? Your hair determines how you learn to live within the confines of the rules.
Yeah.
That's what it determines. You leave the school and you have to operate in the workplace, and there are rules in the workplace. That's what the cutting of your hair teaches you.
Yeah. And the rules have to be abided by, because one of the arguments I've heard concerning the hair would be its roots in oppression, historic oppression. And with all the movements that has been happening, then there is more or less a need to revise things that I guess our people would have felt oppressed by. So it seems to be different, how would I say, angles approaching the argument, but I think it still boils down to institutional guidance. And if the institution has rules, then rules are meant to be followed.
Yeah, but I don't understand this thing about this colonial arguments and so, because all schools have that. The colonial schools have it as well.
Yeah.
It's not only Black people asked to cut their hair. If you go to the leading secondary schools in England, it's something that's put in place there. All the major schools, it's not only hair. Hair grows on all human beings, and asking people to keep their hair within certain limits is just the way of asking you to keep yourself groomed. It's like keeping your fingernails a certain length. I mean, imagine girls going to school with long nails and all different colors, and that's not associated with the environment of a school. You cut your nails, you cut your hair, you bathe every day, you maintain a certain standard of personal hygiene.
Yeah.
You know, we're not saying that you necessarily cut your hair down to the scalp, but keep it at least well groomed. And I cannot buy this argument of that being colonial. And with so many other things we do that's a colonial anyway.
Yeah.
Why are we driving on the left side of the road? That's of England.
Yeah.
So we should drive in the middle of the road then. Have our own rules. We do so many colonial things, and when it comes to the few things to keep the society organized, we argue about it.
Yeah. Because one of the things that also comes to mind, and jokingly, as you say, driving on the middle of the road. I know there have some people
who do it, telling me.
who do it. So, and even the idea of the uniform itself.
Exactly. The uniform is another thing. What is more to me, and I'm sure a lot of these people who argue about this colonial thing, they themselves are proud to see their child leaving in a uniform going to school. You know what chaos it would be if you can wear whatever you want to wear to school? Every day you're looking for different clothes. One wants to outdo the other. Oh, I had a green shirt yesterday. Because I had a green shirt, you wear a green shirt. All kinds of foolish nonsense will be developed in the school. People completely lose focus of what school is about. Keep it simple. A uniform for everybody. In our case, a white shirt, black pants, black socks, black shoes. We all look alike. No argument who's rich, who's poor, who has more, who has less. Keep your hair the same height. Keep it groomed. If you have your religious connections, fine, keep it covered. That's as simple with the scholars. Don't find this, and then they pass the laws saying that you can keep your hair any you want, and then they want to wonder why the society is going down now and not people shooting each other on the roads. Because you made it okay to do anything.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Interesting. I have quite a few comments coming in the Zoom room, but there's also a comment on Facebook. Mr. Junior, Delise, good night. Bernice, Brian, Alexander, good night. Chanel, Paul. Junior Delise posted a comment. I will never forget when a student proudly said, I want you all to send me home because I can now restock on my stock. And he's referring to drugs. Suspensions do not work at all.
Thank you very much. And that's what they've given the only recourse now for principals. And this person is very correct. I was so reluctant to ever suspend a student from that school because I know his parents are at work. And who is going to manage him at home? He's going to end up at the first block available. and their boys there waiting for him. They sit there all day. That's what they want. Send them home to us. And they embrace them in their iniquity. That's what happens, and that is the nonsense that's going to cause more and more of these dropouts to be on the streets. We have to deal with them in the school. They are all schoolboys. All of these miscreants now who are misbehaving were once in a school sitting on a bench. And we did something wrong. That's why they're on the street now. Sometimes it's now, I'm not going to take away from the homes. A lot of it has to do with the homes too.
Yeah.
And folks, don't get me wrong. When I say the school, I'm not talking about the individuals, teachers, or principal. I'm talking about the whole way the schools operate, the system of the schools is what I'm talking about, where we do not deal with problems effectively. There were years ago when we were trying to get an institution in place here. I remember the Principals Association. I used to be vice president of that. And we're trying to get the government to build a holding place, a structure, or provide a structure where you could send boys who were suspended, students, to spend the day. So we know where they are, where they're being supervised by somebody with work to do, and we know where they are. Because suspension, you know how it helps at all, is the fact that the recalcitrant student who is difficult to manage is out of the classroom. So if we have one boy giving a lot of trouble and the other 29 want to learn, you get him out and the other 29 can learn. But we don't want to lose that one.
Yeah.
So you must know where he is. So you put him in that place where he can be supervised. Maybe if other boys from other schools, supervised with work to do, supervised under different circumstances of the school, more like a boot camp supervision with a police officer kind of thing.
Nice.
For the 3 days under those circumstances, so the school will look like a welcoming environment to him afterwards. We have to deal with these problems because that's how you save them from themselves. If you do not do that, they end up on the street killing people.
Yeah. Okay. Very, very, very thought-provoking points. And just before we go into our next discussion, we have some comments coming in from the Zoom room.
Yeah.
Corporal punishment has been replaced by school guidance counselor who need guidance themselves.
Listen, you see, after this, we have one guidance counselor for 600 students in the school.
Wow.
How on earth does this work? The schools have, well, they always had one guidance counselor and they're always overworked. They've always been overworked, even when you had corporal punishment.
Yeah.
Imagine now, you know what kind of case load these poor counselors have? Sometimes they have to go to the homes of the students. And while they're at their homes, there are 10 students waiting for them in school. I'm telling you, we're adopting all of these North American policies, abandoning this, abandoning that, and we have nothing in place. We have no safety nets to deal with students who drop out of the system. These people have all kinds of things. Yeah. When they say don't flog students, they have other things to do. We have nothing else here. So, okay, don't flog, but give us something, a way of dealing, because there are students who give problems, who have to be dealt with, who will end up on the street killing people.
Yeah.
That is the reality, whether you want to face it or not. You have to deal with them when you can, when you have them in the school. Because once they leave the school, they're gone. They disappear in the cracks. And they come out at night or come out on motorcycles.
Yes.
With hoodies and helmets. You can't see who they are. They do their nonsense and they disappear again. That was the same student who might have been sitting in the classroom 5 years before who we didn't deal with.
Very interesting. Another comment. Corporal punishment in the schools should be replaced with counseling. Students should be allowed to express themselves and discuss their complaints. Pain is primitive. Talking and reasoning with students as should be done at the home. That could be more effective. And the cane takes the place of the talking and the reasoning.
Listen, cane is not done haphazardly. I spend so many hours talking to students, and one and talk to the college boys. How many boys came to the office for cane who never got cane? I used to tell the teachers, do not tell any students you're sending them to the office for cane. You're sending them to the office to see Mr. Seon. Mr. Seon will decide if you get cane or not. There's several boys who came and never got cane. You sit down and talk to them. But there are cases that are too extreme. You have sometimes to take the appropriate action. You have to correct misbehavior. If it goes uncorrected, it increases in its intensity the next time. And then you have problems on the street. I keep saying those people on the street who were killing people were once in the school and they were not corrected. I'm not saying the only correction is caning. You talk to them too. Yes, they're counseling, but there are times when that is necessary. There are times when you need to have immediate dealing with issues. You don't want to talk for 2 hours and then you sometimes don't even solve the problem. Because by the time you're talking to the person, the class is running. The maths class is going and he's missing out on something. Sometimes you just give him a quick punishment, send him back to the class, go and learn the maths. You see, he spends too much time out of the classroom and he's being punished for life. You give him 4, 3 or 2 strokes and he's being punished for 10 minutes.
Yeah. Okay, well, we have some more comments. Seems that the whole idea of corporal punishment seems to have been a sore point for, well, not the idea of it, but the abolishment of it seems to be a sore point without any suitable replacement, like you rightfully said.
And without adequate consultation with people like myself and others who could have advised how to deal with it. Because we had corporal punishments institutionalized at St. Mary's College, with specific guidelines as to how it should be done. And parents could have, I used to inform parents when boys are being caned. I informed them. And very often, Mrs. Seon, go ahead. That's what I would get from parents. Sometimes they say, do not cane my son. I say, okay, well, I'm going to send him home to you, and you ensure that he's supervised for the next 2 days or whatever it was. And then they said, yes, I'll take care of my son. And I know some of these parents are quite capable of doing that. That's fine. But I never cane any boy who was going to be fighting with me in the office, you know. And these fellows are sometimes much bigger than me, and I'm going to do that. And in any case, do you know, and again, Siobhan, I'm glad you're the one here.
Yes.
You know we hardly cane boys in Form 5. Caning is something for the little fellas. You don't cane big boys in Form 4 and Form 5.
Yes.
You normally stop in Form 3, typically, unless it's really an extreme thing. Because you know what the worst part about caning a boy in Form 4 and Form 5?
Yeah.
The embarrassment.
Yes.
Not the pain, to go back to the classroom and you have to face your college boys in the room that you just got caned.
Yes.
You know what used to happen? They'd come around the office and listen to the strokes.
On the back step?
At the back steps. And go back to the classroom and wait for him to come and laugh at him. It wasn't the pain of the physical contact. Yes. It's the pain of the occasion. Yes. That's what was the college boys, they had this thing worked into the system. It worked there for all kinds of reasons. No boy wanted to go back to the class and have to face his peers because he was caned. So he didn't do what it would cause him to be caned. They used to come and beg me, Mrs. Seon, please, don't cane me. Is that a pain? Huh? This fella's going to laugh at me. I'd get that all the time.
Yes.
People don't understand anything about what went on at that school, you know, unless you're inside the school. Half of the boys were more embarrassed to be caned than afraid of the physical pain, to face their friends afterwards, to say, boy, you will get 6 strokes or anything. And they laugh at them for a whole day because of that.
Yeah, I can definitely attest to that experience. The last time I think I did experience that was Form 2.
Oh, I came in Form 2?
Yes.
Oh, boy. Well, sure. And look where I got you. You know, you're interviewing me. You see what I mean? It works.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. And for sure, I'm sure a lot of SMC boys listening and who will listen will remember the back step, because the back step, especially for extreme situations, all you would hear is just the cane. You'll not hear anything.
But I had to always check these back steps to see the boys would come right behind there just to hear the strokes and to run back to the classroom to tell the class, yeah, they gave him 4, they gave him 5, they gave him 6, and I got nothing.
Yes. All right. Well, definitely we'll have to.
You know, people talk about King traumatizing. What's traumatizing? The foolish nonsense about 4 strokes traumatizing a boy for life. I've never heard no nonsense. These fellas on the court punching each other, all kind of thing there, during basketball, and 4 strokes. Come on.
Like they say in our terms, our generation was built different.
As young men you're dealing with, you have
Yes.
to make them tough.
Yes.
You're not you sending them out there, and next thing they can't even deal with their own family issues afterwards. It's a whole society. The school bred young men who can face and deal with challenges, and that's part of it. If you do the crime, you got to do the time. You have to face the consequences of your action. Yes. And the school taught you that. Yes. You don't stand up in the classroom and curse another boy because he said something or did something you don't like in the teacher's presence and expect that to be said. We call it down and talk, oh, please don't curse again. Oh, you got 6 strokes and go back to your class. Yeah. You don't foul F words in the classroom in the presence of the teacher, and that has to go with telling you not to do it. So you didn't know you're not supposed to do it? Give me a break.
Of course. No, now I'm happy that you touched on the parents, the communication with the parents, and a little bit about the families. Now, this is a question that I fielded to one of our past participants.
Yeah.
Do you think that the education system is doing enough to eradicate misconceptions about not gender roles, but, well, more or less gender roles? Do you think that the education system is doing enough to eradicate misconceptions about what role men should play versus what role women should play?
Boy, that's a good one. And people may argue that SMC as a boys' school wouldn't be in a position to do that, because you'd think in the classroom of boys and girls, that would be the ideal setting to deal with these things. But not necessarily, because we know we had our civics class and we had different things that are supposed to do that. And I started by saying that the successful student is not necessarily one who gets 9 CX or grade 1s and leaves the school. You have your character to develop as well, your social skills, being able to deal with people around you, deal with your family setting, deal with challenges you may encounter of people on the street, all kinds of things. All of those things are part of the development of the young man. And certainly the school has to play its part in that. But that's where the soft skills come in. And most schools, I think, try to do that through one type of program or another. There's a family life program that the schools was introduced some years ago into the schools that's designed to do that. There are different aspects of health sciences and integrated science that have components related to that. Yes, the answer is simply, it is an important aspect of education. Education is not about passing exams only. That's one third of it. Yeah, it's important, but it's 1/3. There are the other 2/3 of the person that have to be developed. And like I said, the integrity, the character, the inside man has to be developed, as well as the integration of the person in society, how he interacts with people around him. These are the areas. And one encompassing factor that covers these things pretty nicely, that we disregard, is the religious one, you know. We must keep that in mind, that our school is a school where we respect the presence and the strength of God in our lives. And that tends to cover a lot of these things. You'd be surprised how a lot of people who have that foundation in church, they understand these things. And I remember there was a time when a student came to the office and he was telling me how he's a Seventh-day Adventist. And I told him, and you in the office of misbehavior? I remember that it came up because I talked to them before I punished them. Usually. Yes. And he told me that. You tell me, Mrs. Seon, you know, there are quite a few Seventh-day Adventists in the school, and there are very very infrequently come to the office, I think you're probably correct. And I actually checked that. I knew we know the Seventh-day Adventists, because when you have RK, they're the ones doing it. And the boys who used to remain in the class during the RK sessions are very often those who are in the smaller religions, and I never saw them in the office. So there was a strong correlation between those with Christian connections and behavior. Why is that? Because they're getting it at least from the church. Even if they don't, maybe they get it from the home as well. So the church has its role to play in keeping order in the society as well. And we shouldn't underestimate that aspect of this, so the whole complex institution that the society is. Many things play a part. You got a home, you got a school, but the church, and we have to ask ourselves, have the churches been playing the kind of part that they could? Especially lately, because I don't know if do you attend church regularly, Siobhan?
Well, yes, I do.
You try? Have you noticed that since COVID, the numbers have gone down significantly?
Yes.
Some churches have not recovered, And I think now they have online services to cover for those who are not coming. But that's another issue. And a lot of churches went through a lot of difficulty during COVID, and they've not come out of that at all. Numbers are down. People are not attending church anymore. And there's another factor that could contribute to what's going on around us. I know people kind of brush that off as being insignificant, but there's another factor that we have to bear in mind.
Okay. There is an aspect of, masculinity that I would like to touch on, and it goes a bit deep.
Yeah.
As a former vice principal, former principal of an all-boys school, you've had to deal with those boys at all stages, fresh from primary school and ready for the working world.
Yeah.
One of the challenges of adolescence is that these boys develop wit. So they're very quick with their tongue, and sometimes even with their actions. Their sarcasm is through the roof. How did you safely navigate that challenge, or that reality, I should say, and still allow
the boys to be boys?
The boys to be boys, and at the end of the day, you received outwardly the respect, as in the recognition at the end of their journey.
Let me tell you something. I'm glad you asked that. I don't think there are two types of young men in San Michel like college boys. There's something about the culture of that school where that type of, you call it sarcasm, an old joke, and the sharp-wittedness is something that a lot of the female teachers couldn't deal with in particular. I mean, let me tell you something. I used to get complaints. We always try to employ boys back to the school, past college boys, because they understand how the boys think. And sometimes they can go overboard. But if it's another past student, they understand that. But sometimes the lady teachers, who are wonderful teachers, we love to have them because they're great in the classroom, they didn't quite get the joke sometimes. And they would, I had to deal with that, I'm telling you. And I have to sometimes, for instance, to mention, I don't want to give all the inside information too much, but there are times when I would have to walk around to the various classrooms and make sure the boards were well cleaned. Because boys would write things on the boards that they know would irk a teacher or two. And the teacher would walk into the classroom and see something on the board. One of the typical college boy jokes,
Yeah.
And problems. Teacher will refuse to go into the room, so I have to make sure it's taken off. The reason I know that is, I think I can mention that when I was at that school, I think I was one of these kind of students who was a little bit on the troublesome side as well.
Wow.
As far as that is concerned.
Yes.
I remember I used to be very keen on, jiving teachers and looking for little errors and responding to their errors with a joke and so on. So I was always sensitive to that.
Yes.
Always sensitive to that. And I think it's very much a cultural thing in the school. There are boys, every classroom has a few boys like that, and you look out for them. And I always used to tell the teachers, you got to be careful. Do not allow them to get you angry. It's better usually to laugh it off and move along. You know, that's college boy humor. But it's always an issue that can cause unnecessary anger on the part of the teacher and so on. And teaching at that school always had its peculiar consequences as far as that's concerned.
Okay.
No,
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Yes. So with the typical school environment, because most schools, as we know, they do have classrooms, but not all schools have facilities. For example, there are some schools on island that don't have a playing field that they can access. But I know with St. Mary's College, we had 2 courts, we had 2 fields, and the school itself is a very large compound. Mm-hmm. What do you think can be done in schools that do not have the land, or I should say the land resource? What do you think can be done to accommodate the balanced life for boys in schools that do not have access to those facilities?
I spent a year one time as acting principal at 𝐒𝐿. And that dawned on me that the students really had a disadvantage. They had no football field.
Oh, wow.
No cricket field. The comprehensive school next door had.
Yeah.
And it isn't to say the comprehensive school allowed the 𝐒𝐿 boys to go and play there. No, there's a fence between the schools. And you couldn't just go on that. So they have this major disadvantage. You'd have to go to the VG field or the Cleary field for the activities. Can you imagine that? And that's a major planning issue. I mean, you have to wonder, why would the school have been placed there when it is obvious they have no space to run around? We're talking about boys, 11, 12, 13 years old, 14 testosterone kicking in, and they want to stretch their legs, they want to move, and there's no space to move. And that's a major issue. Clearly, I don't think that has happened with any of the schools that is as bad as 𝐼RA-Simmons. The current school and all these schools have playing areas. Anthropo has a limited one, it's not very big. Leon Hess has some, although I don't think they have a whole lot. But they have some. And then the thing is, well, St. Joseph's Convent has a problem like that, but they seem to have managed. But then again, you're dealing with girls. Yeah. And some of the girls don't seem to feel the lack of physical space like the boys do. And that's one of the points we're making. Yeah. The girls can sit in the classroom for 3 hours, 4 hours, then come outside and then sit on the playground. When you go to the convent, you see them sitting with their legs crossed, very calmly chatting.
Very demure.
Huh?
Very demure. Yes.
That's the thing about that school, you know.
Yeah.
And they walk in the grass. They walk in the grass.
Yes.
Imagine that. Telling college boys to walk on the grass. But we have to play football. You know, that's we don't walk, you run on it. They jump on it. And you know, but the convent girls stay off the grass. They have their little sandwiches, nibbling at them and so on, very nicely. Yeah. That's the difference between the boys and the girls right there.
Yeah.
You see, you do not have, the girls can, that's why they actually, that type of mindset, sitting in a room for 3 hours and focusing is what leads to excellence in exam results, you see. But boys are not cut from that cloth. They need the space to run around. They need to sweat. They need to come into the classroom sweating. And you know, yes. That used to be a problem with the teachers.
First thing in the morning sometimes.
The lady teachers would come, would come, this is when I can't teach the placement and the sweat.
Yeah.
What do you mean? But that's the boys. But the male teachers never bothered about that. They never even noticed the boys were sweating. Yeah. And that's the difference in the psychology. So you deal with these things. But the running around is necessary. It's an absolute vital aspect of learning because it allows the boys to express themselves fully as young men, not as some kind of automatons in the classroom, sitting with their hands on their laps. That's not how boys operate. They need to be able to function. That's why you need to have more men nurturing the men to let them know these things. A lot of these boys grew up with no male around them at home. The mother's the only person around. Then they go to primary school with a female teacher. And they never really see an adult man who can guide them appropriately, you know. Yeah. You realize that?
Yes.
95% of the teachers in St. Lucia are ladies. So if they depended on a lady, if they depended on the teacher to get guidance, where's it going to come from? So we need to have the male-male interaction, letting them know what men are supposed to do. I suspect these boys think it's probably wrong to sweat, because when they have female teachers telling them, boy, I can't teach you, you're sweating too much, they're going to say, well, it's either I learn or I sweat. So it's one of the two. Yes. You see? So at the end of the day, it's not an ideal environment. Yeah. For them at all.
Somehow you just happen to just take all the questions from me, because my next question actually was, as an educator, have you noticed the difference in behavior, particularly amongst the boys, based on their family structure? They have boys who come from single parent father and mother households,
yeah.
Boys who come from nuclear households, and boys who come from extended households. Mm-hmm. Have you noticed any differences in the way that they're structured and behave?
I'm sorry, but I have to say yes. 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 You can know when the father is not doing what he's supposed to do, or if he's around at all. I mean, you know, one of the most reassuring and rewarding experiences I could have in that school is when I call for a parent and the father comes to the school. Oh, that used to make my day, man. Especially if a boy is misbehaving and his father comes, then I know, thank God, the father's responded to that. Because 99% of the time, the mothers used to come. Usually there's no father, or the father is too busy to deal with it. So even if the father's at home, sometimes he just is not around to deal with the issues. Clearly, the nuclear type structure, father-mother, is the ideal thing, where both of them, sometimes they both come. And you can see when both parents come to the school, they're not coming because the boy misbehaving, you know. They're coming to discuss something, you know, a scholarship and things like that. So you can see right away the kind of structure you're dealing with.
Yeah.
And there's a strong correlation between the domestic situation and the conduct of students at school. Even the learning outcomes are correlated to that. But having said that, I want to quickly add that it's not always the case, because I've had some wonderful exceptions to this thing, to this rule. There are boys who I know have mothers alone and do brilliantly, because some of these mothers are, they are beasts, you know. They handle these boys with an efficiency that no father can, you know. So it's not to say that the mothers are not doing what they can do on their own. A lot of them do. And they do because they're strong women. And then we have situations where sometimes they live in some very destitute areas, ghetto areas. And you will never know looking at the boys. I have boys who come to the school from parts of Castries. I won't bother to specify where. Yeah. But there's one particular family, 3 boys, I'll say no more, from a difficult area of Castries. And these boys were outstanding boys in the school. They grew up in the area. All around them was the misbehavior, the drugs and things. You never know. Prefects in the school. All did outstanding, major big jobs now and things like that. So it isn't always the environment in the broad scale, but the micro environment at your home can be positive in spite of the area around you. So we don't judge people based on where they come from and these kinds of things. Because many brilliant boys in that school who've done so well came from very humble places. So we never ever look at that. And on the other hand, a lot of them from the capital states come and give a lot of trouble in the school as well. So that's not the issues all the time. The character of the person can be determined by the structure of the household in which he grows. And very often the mother is the one who sets the level of tolerance for misbehavior. Fathers too, but mother can vary. With very few cases where the father alone did it. Very, 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 very few cases at the school.
Wow.
I mean, I know a few, but if there's only one parent, it's the mother. You see, ideally, of course, it's both. But I never assume that because it's the mother alone, the boys are not going to behave well. Not at all.
Okay. Well, before we open for questions, answers, well, question and answer and comments, there's one question I would like to ask you, just to tap into your cultural involvement and interest.
Oh, yeah.
In 2022, the winning Calypso monarch,
𝐑𝐨𝐻, yeah,
he performed a song called Legacy.
right.
How much of the creative direction of that song, based on its lyrics, how much of that can we apply in terms of
I like that.
Yeah, as parents, as teachers, as educators, how much of that can we do, and how do we go?
And you remember the song? The song dealt with three things.
Yes.
It dealt with the fact that 𝐑𝐨𝐻 is taken over from his father.
Yes.
That's one thing. It dealt with the idea of succession planning.
Yeah.
The father, realizing he was on his way out, prepared 𝐑𝐨𝐻 to take over. And the whole idea of legacy retention, of keeping the excellence going from one to the next. That's what the song was about, at these three levels, because they made reference to unkept legacies.
Yes.
For instance, when John Compton died and he tried to pass it on to the next person, it didn't work. You see, even now, we see that there are issues there and so on. And, I tried to balance it by having the legacy in the other party as well, where that didn't work as the previous prime minister expected, kind of thing. So it is tied on with different things.
Yeah.
I think the idea is that you have to prepare for the next group coming along. Prepare for who's going to be taking your place. You have a son, I gather.
Yes.
2 sons, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And you have to ensure that what you know and what you consider vital is passed on to them. And that if and when the time comes for you to step out, they can step in and maintain the standard. Same thing in the school where we are there. We try to maintain the standard where the principals that come after the principal that leaves can maintain the standard of the school. There must always be somebody being prepared to take over. And that is the thrust of what's going on in that particular song that I think is important for everybody. You never know when you're going to go. So if you have somebody preparing to at least maintain what you consider important, your family heritage, your personal values, whatever it is, and you have somebody prepared to at least ensure that that can continue after you've gone, then you would have fulfilled the idea of legacy protection.
Because one thing I can note is that the behavior of SMC boys, it seems to transcend generations. Because even myself, a few weeks ago, I was interacting with a gentleman, and he was speaking to me about his interests, particularly in the area of public speaking.
Yeah.
And his mannerisms, I looked at him and I said, "You're a college boy." He said, "Yes, how you know that?" And there just seems to be something distinct about boys who go through that system, which tells me that it's working and it's not something constant to a particular group, but you come into the system as a boisterous RC boy, you bouncing left, right, and then you leave the institution refined, mature, educated, more equipped. And that is why I really spoke about the legacy, because I believe that plays itself into how you as an administrator of the school cultured the boys.
What you saw from me, I learned a lot of it from Mr. Mondesi. Mr. Mondesi was there before me, and he would have learned it from the brothers who were there before him. That's the way it goes. And I like to think now that Mr. Fontenelle, who's there now, has picked up a lot. I actually worked with Mr. Fontenelle, and I thought he was an excellent assistant to me, not formally, but at least a de facto assistant while he was there. And he picked up a lot. So a lot of what he's doing is what he'd have seen me do, and what I did. Certain things I brought in on my own, of course, but I picked up a lot from Mr. Mondesi. Mr. Fontenelle, I guess, will bring some little things from his own as well. But that's how the school should go. And that's why an old school that's been run well should never fall apart. It should be able to maintain itself. The first formers come in and they learn from the second formers learn from the third formers ahead of them, and so on and so on. So even the culture of the boys is passed down through the boys themselves. The prefects go into the rooms. I don't know if you were you a prefect in your time?
No.
No, you weren't. You're giving trouble, man. but the prefects go into rooms, and then there's no teacher around, but they're going to talk to the boys about what college boys do. And that's how the boys pick it up and what college boys do not do, you know, kind of thing. And that's the way the culture is protected and passed on and defended. And, you know, it continues. You're right. You can see a little fella in town now. That's from 3, 2 or 3, and you can see already here, he has this college boy thing that is difficult to define, but easy to identify once you see it.
Okay. And my last question before I open up the room would be in response to something you just said about the protection of the culture. And there seems to be a lot of misinformation, particularly to maybe students who may be interested in attending this institution. I have a question which more or less deals with the fear that some parents as well as some students may have attending the all-boys school in SMC because they assume, because it's a male-only environment, that a particular sexuality may take precedence.
I mean, I haven't bothered to dignify that with a response.
Yes.
Listen, man, look, St. Mary's College is a male school, as a uni-gender school. I wouldn't say unisex, I say uni-gender school with boys only.
Yes.
That is one type of educational modality. Yes. It has its advantages. People claim that there are disadvantages because the boys may not learn how to deal with girls, but that is nonsense. Because these boys meet girls in town, they have the convent girls are the best friends. You're married to a convent girl yourself. That is a natural association that's been happening for years. Yes. The college boys, every one of them have some convent girl would have an eye on. So I'm not even bothered to give that any kind of oxygen for further discussion. The boys are manly, well-structured, well-defined young men, and they act accordingly. They play football, they sweat, they play cricket, they play basketball, they play volleyball, and they bounce each other in the sweat and they go to the classroom. Had there been girls in the classroom, you know what would happen?
Yeah.
They wouldn't want to sweat, they'd be afraid.
Yes.
Then the girls would tell them, boy, move on me, boy, you're sweating too much. And they wouldn't play hard. That's why we do well at sports. We work hard, we sweat hard, we play hard, and we leave the school. And you see them around when it's time to leave the school, they all of them in the bathroom cleaning up themselves. They're going to meet the girls in town. So that's okay.
Yes.
That's the tradition of the school.
I can definitely attest to that because there was this time, I think in Form 4, we had after school lessons, and the word came out that we had a student coming in from convent. And I remember that particular afternoon, no sports.
I'm telling you,
no sports.
You can't imagine what they would do to the school if we bring girls there. Yeah. The fellas would stop playing. These guys would play until their clothes drag off their body, you know, on that basketball court. Why do you think we used to dominate basketball and these things? Because they played hard. Mm-hmm. I mean, that is just the way it is. And girls would cause a severe diminution in the intensity of the competition among these boys. They'll be concerned how they look and how they smell, and if this and that and so, and they'll hold back. And I know that affects boys in the other schools. We don't have to worry about that. Yeah. College, we can never bring girls in that school. The girls are lovely. We love them, but let them stay there. We'll meet them after school, not during school hours. Thank you very much.
And I like the way that you seal that, you know, in true principle fashion. After school, not during school hours. These are the rules. And I'm happy that you divulge your feedback in that manner because it really tells us how important discipline and structure and order is in the lives of young men. Because if you lack that, then they get accustomed to that. And they grow a very liberal life.
Exactly. You have to put structure in places. You have to have order for a young man. He grows up and you can deal with it afterwards. If he grows up doing what he wants to do, by the time he gets out there, it becomes uncomfortable for him to even form a line to go into a shop. A simple thing like that. Why do you have to line up? Because you didn't line up at school. That's why it's a problem for you now. If you spend 5 years at school lining up to go to the canteen, then you go to the supermarket and you have to line up, you won't quarrel. You'll be used to it. That's how societies function. I mean, you must have a civilized society. You can't do what you want. You have to work within the confines of order. And then we can all live together and be comfortable. Now people can't leave their house. They're afraid what could happen. All kind of nonsense going on.
All right, so now is the question and answer segment. So feel free to raise your hand in the Zoom room and I will call you in the order that
you read them out for me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, because I'm not sure.
I'll read out the comments, but I'll also open the line for persons.
For calls. Oh yeah, certainly.
Yes.
That'd be nice.
All right. So
I hope there's some college boys from all of the era.
All right.
All the era can call in from whenever to whenever.
All right. Now I see we have a question from Lynette. Lynette, go ahead.
Well, oh, that's a familiar. It's my sister. Today's her birthday. Happy birthday, Leonard. But when I hear you,
you have to unmute.
Unmute your phone.
Can you hear me?
Right, we hear you now.
Can you hear me? Yes, thank you.
Happy birthday again.
Thank you so very much. I was just thinking, we know
your point, please.
Yes, the world is changing. Young people, can you hear me?
Yes, just 1 second.
Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Yes. Now we can see.
Yeah. Okay. This is a changing world now. Kids of 2 and 3 years old are using the computers. They're very au courant with what's going on in terms of navigating the internet and so on. These kids are far advanced to the average kid, 2 or 3 year old kid years and years ago because of exposures and so on. Are teachers ready for this new kind of children that are coming into the school system? Yeah, is the school curriculum keeping up with these children? And I'm talking about primary schools before they even get into the secondary schools. What are the schools doing to actually accommodate these kids who are curious, who want to ask questions, who want to be heard? Because I still think the environment in the schools now in the Caribbean is you keep quiet. The teachers are the ones who are running the classroom. There's not a lot of interaction between students and teachers. What's being done to accommodate that? And I'm saying that because I remember when my daughter came to St. Joseph's Convent from Canada, she was in the class with a few other expat kids, and they weren't rude, but they were speaking up. And the teachers thought they were rude because you're not talking too much. You know, so kids are almost being not allowed to express themselves, not allowed to be heard. And I'm just wondering if teachers are keeping up with this new kind of students that are coming into the schools and the workplace, the schools now.
Yeah, man, that's so important. That is such an important point. And, you know, the students are changing and the teachers are being the same. Essentially, you know, COVID caused a lot of changes here that were not expected, not predicted, not even catered for properly. And it made us realize that we have a lot of growing up to do in our education system. I sadly think that since the changes which took place immediately following COVID, we have gone back again into the state of complacency, thinking, okay, things will be fine, COVID is over. But we should continue with that same, the acceleration in the technical aspect of teaching, which took place, has to continue. And you're right, we're now getting into this AI era, where students are coming in with information that's going to make teachers look boring in the classroom if they do not prepare themselves. So teaching is going to have to change dramatically. It's going to have to change, not just Sanusha, everybody. And we are going to suffer because we, like I said, the little progress we made with what became necessary during COVID has been allowed to slip back. A lot of it that was happening has stopped. Teachers, I don't think, have continued the level of online activity, which would have allowed us now to go into, let's change gear into the new developments that are becoming necessary. But you've identified a problem. I take it that the persons involved in education planning are aware of it and will be taking that into account. One of the first questions that I was asked here is how we're going to deal with the process of this AI stuff in classrooms. Because you cannot be asking a child to write an essay and the child is getting the entire essay online and you're not able to identify whether it's from online or from the child's head. So we're going to have new modalities of testing the child. I suggested they're going to have presentations. So the child says, you wrote the essay, okay, well, present the essay to me. Tell me what it is about. Even if the child got it from online and the child is able to present it effectively, that's a good thing. At least you would have assimilated the knowledge and can then put it into your own words and present it. You've learned something. So I have no problem with that. And nobody should have a problem with that. But we're going to have to develop new modalities for teaching, for assessing students, and for the whole process of education. I don't know if you...
Yep, totally agree.
All right. Okay, thank you very much, Lynette, for
You're
your
welcome.
question and contribution.
Okay. Sorry, I was looking at the wrong. You noticed I wasn't watching you. Sorry, okay, that was my mistake. I was watching the screen.
Okay, so we have several comments coming in, and of course, if you have a question, you can unmute your mic and then go ahead and make your contribution.
Yeah, just have some comments now.
Okay, so there are questions here. Okay.
Let's read them sequentially.
Yes. Okay, so you have Alexandra saying, perfect guest for this topic. Wish this can be shared so that persons can view at their leisure. Definitely, it's being streamed live on Facebook. So after this session, you should be able to see it within an hour on the Empowerment Project Facebook page. I will make the link available to all of you. Students should be allowed to be more participatory in the classroom. That's from Lynette. And we also have Chelsea. Chelsea saying, teachers should be more knowledgeable about emotional intelligence. This will foster a healthy classroom. Talking about the suspension, maybe the new institution in Marigot, they can have a conversation with the people in charge to assist in this regard. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's a suggestion.
Yeah, I see what it's saying, but we don't want to use it as punishment. You know, you have to be careful. The person is suggesting, like, if you can send them there rather than send them home.
Yes.
But this is a school. It's a reputable school in its own right. And the students are there because they are doing the right thing, not because they're doing the wrong thing. So you have to be careful with that.
Okay. All right. Let me see if Chelsea is on the feed. Second. Okay, go ahead, Chelsea. We do welcome you to the mic to elaborate on your contribution.
Hello, good night. So,
Chelsea?
yes.
You've been very active. Very good. Thank you very much.
Yes, I am. What you were saying that, like you said, it's a reputable school. You mentioned a point that they should have something separate, like, build something separate so that when they suspend students, they can actually go there. So maybe they can take your contribution and have that in mind again.
Yeah.
So just wanted to stress on that since my point.
I
Yeah.
just feel that you have to be careful because the Marigo School is designed for students who are operating at a level where they want a hands-on type of education as opposed to the book and writing on paper kind of thing too much. They do a little bit of both, but they want mainly that. You don't want it to appear to be these are persons who are any less effective or any less desirable, and you want to send persons there who are being punished and things like that. You be careful with that, you see. I don't think it's a good idea to use that particular school to deal with those who are misbehaving at other schools, because it changes the whole concept of what's going on there. That's what I think.
Okay, thank you very much, Chelsea. We have a comment from Facebook from Jonathan Symphorium. Big up Simple, good night.
Yes, that's your year?
Yes.
I remember that.
Yes, so he asked, do you believe that financial literacy should be incorporated into the school curriculum?
Yes. Don't say anything more. That is the one area that we don't teach persons how to handle money at all. That's you see, that's another thing about, I think, one of the colonial areas that we do deal with. Yeah. They never taught Black people how to handle money, you know. And people complaining about Canaan is colonial. What about that? That's never been on our school programs, teaching young Black people how to deal with money the way the other societies teach it. Yes, it must be there. You know, management of the little $2 you have, how you deal with it properly. It should be part of the program. CXC doesn't teach that. There's POB, but POB isn't that. No, it's not that at all. It's a different direction. Financial management involves dealing with money, so you know how to use a small amount of money to make more, or whatever, how to deal with stretching it, how to you can't run a society without money. So it must be one of the subjects on the program. And he's right, it should be there. And it is not there because they never want us to learn about that. So we're always dependent on persons who have money. That's why it's not there. So yes, let's put it on the program now.
Nice. Okay, so we have another comment coming through. Gavin, he says that they cut from the same cloth, but from young they are allowed more leeway. And I assume that's maybe when we were talking about the boys, girls situation, but I will allow him to elaborate. So Gavin, we do welcome you to the mic to make a contribution.
He's there?
1 second. Yes, he is.
Very good. Yes. Okay, let's get him out. Gavin, what's his surname?
Well, the username is just Gavin.
Okay.
Go ahead.
We have a few Gavins at SMC.
𝐑𝐨𝐶.
SMC?
Yes, sir.
Hey. What year you won?
Huh?
What year you left?
97.
Oh, good year, 97. All right.
I mean, I would say that I disagree that boys are supposed to be treated differently than girls, and they somehow have some different DNA that, you know, they should be catered for. I think the reason why the girls are well behaved is because people expect them to be well behaved, and boys, we don't expect them to be well behaved. And the issues we have in society, it shows that.
So you're talking about with how do you call it, fulfilling the self-fulfilled prophecy.
Exactly.
Yeah. Some bad, so they act it out. Well, that's a point too. That's another factor. I think it's multifactorial though.
Yeah.
I don't think this is one thing causing it, but it's what you're suggesting there is part of the problem that we have to include that into the solution.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Gavin from 97. Samirian. Okay, we have another comment from Total Support who says, exactly, the world is feminizing our boys and it's terrible. No matter how well a woman raises a child, it takes two holistic individuals to do so. And they said a woman can never raise a man on her own.
Yeah. You see that? That is something I'm afraid is true, you know. And the mothers do their best, but they don't quite have the wherewithal to say the right things to the boys. And subsequently, the boys get a little pushed in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
There are too many female pressures on the boys from all over. And then they go to the schools and it's female teachers again.
Yeah.
You
So
see?
sometimes their coping mechanisms, if they use like sass at home, sometimes they come to school with that same sass.
Yes. And that's important. And I'm glad that they reason it. We're not saying anything wrong with the girls. We love the girls, you know. The girls are wonderful, but we have two distinct genders. Yeah. And we have our roles in society. We have our strengths, our weaknesses, and I think we have to respect that. I don't think this transition of boy to girl thing is anything we need to foster in our part of the world at all. I'm just saying that. That's my view. People like me will probably die out and things will change. But I am very uncomfortable with this transitionary person in between boy and girl.
Yeah. Well, that's all part of the legacy. So even when you're gone, hopefully that information will be there,
right.
you know. Okay, so I'd like to
Could I say something? Could I say something here about mothers raising the children without a male individual? I mean, we know it can definitely be done, but I think it takes a village, and the mother would definitely look to family and look to other male members in their family to help with the nurturing of the child. So right. I mean, whereas she will be the single person in the home, it doesn't mean that she cannot make the decisions. Also, along with the support
advice
and support from other male individuals.
Yes, so that's fine.
I think the right thinking, well, I don't say the right thinking mother, but the mother who thinks outside the box will definitely look to other male father figures to help with the nurturing of the child.
Right. I think we are a little remiss then not to indicate that is possible too.
Totally. It's worked in many instances.
Yeah, absolutely. But once the mother is wise enough to recognize her limitations and the need counsel of the males who may be around the child's life, that will be fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Can I speak on something?
Go ahead, Hillary.
Okay. Well, I would like to say that I believe, well, in my years of schooling, we had a closer bond with our teachers. I can remember when I came to St. Mary's College, I was...
Ross.
Which year is that?
Gilly Charles. Big Gilly Charles.
Big Ross. What?
Yes.
Goodness, that was the super Hillary man.
Yes.
That's right. And I remember the very first week of school. Well, the very first month, actually, you know, Mr. Seon was saying, you know, we're not going to be giving you any jokes. And honestly, I did 5 years at the school, and I was actually the one giving the most jokes in my classmates and stuff like that. I must say, we made a very good environment for somebody like me who had a very, very, very low self-esteem, self-confidence, and my teachers and my peers were able to assist me in building that and, you know, making me enjoy my young days. Especially when you grew up in a house by yourself, you don't really have nobody to talk to. When you go to school, these were the happiest days of my life. So I'd like to say kudos to Mr. Seon, kudos to Mr. 𝐒𝐬. I was actually the vice captain of presentation house. You know, he had a lot of confidence in me as a big guy, allowing me to participate in sports. And I definitely will say I'll never forget my days at school. I never forget when they used to say, your days at school are your happiest days. And growing up, if I have to go back to college, I'll go back over and over again, honestly. Yeah.
Henry, thanks so much for that, man. That means a lot to me. And people don't know you, but you one of the heavier.
Yeah. And one of the books, Mr. Seon, one of my classmates used to say, the only reason why they wish they were big like me. I remember you used to come down hard on us for skinny jeans, confiscate the skinny jeans, and you used to give us a pants. But me, you couldn't give me a pants, so you just had to speak to me about it. Yeah.
But I had to take about 10 pounds to give it. Yes, Henry, that's wonderful, man. That's so nice hearing from you. But I remember I saw you some time ago and you said hello to me. Remember that? Hey, Henry gone already. Yeah, man, great. Nice hearing you, Henry. What year I left again, remember?
I think it was 2011.
When it's after, the day after you?
Yeah.
Okay. But I made a loan one time.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah.
Okay, he's back.
Right, oh, Henry, you're back. Okay, great. Wonderful. Nice call, Henry. Nice hearing from you.
All right, I see we have Kevin here. His mic is open. Go ahead.
Who's this Kevin now? Yeah, a lot of Kevins there, I'm seeing.
Imagine. Kevin, go ahead. Okay. Yes, the mic was open.
Yeah, gone about this business.
Well, all right. Well, Kevin, if you're speaking, we cannot hear you right now.
So you have to unmute your mic or something.
Yes. All right. Meanwhile, let me just go through the comments. Okay, so we have another comment from, well, the account is Total Support. Correct. Keep the college boys for the boys and the convent for the girls. We have sufficient comprehensive schools. All right.
Co-ed schools, I mean.
Yes, I guess that's what they're suggesting. So Total Support, come to the mic. Go ahead and make your contribution.
Total Support.
Okay, so while we wait on that contribution, let's just go through the rest of the comments. Okay, okay, Gavin is saying SMC and SGC need to be mixed. So you have one person saying keep them separate, you have a next one saying let's mix them up. All right, Gavin, again, sending a bunch of people who misbehave to one place is a recipe for making them worse.
Well, we manage them, eh? We've been managing them pretty well. The school has existed since 1890, and we're still there. So we just have to make sure we continue managing it.
Yes.
And the convent seems to be doing pretty well as well. I think the convent never looking to have any college boys up there. Not in a hurry, anyway.
Anytime soon. Okay, all right. So we have another comment. Gavin, again, are we going to talk about the hair issue for the boys?
We did, eh?
You touched on that quite a bit.
Yeah, we did. I think you know, like I say, problems start with little things. And if the boys do not think managing their hair is a problem today, is here today and they'll be gone tomorrow kind of thing, because it starts there and it gets worse in other areas. Management is a holistic thing, you see, and I think keeping your hair at a certain level is an indication that you're prepared to manage yourself. So it is. You can't just go and let things go as it is.
Okay. All right. So we have, okay. All right. We have somebody trying to call. So just give me 1 second. I will try to set you up on that call. Yes, I'll try to set you up on that call. We have another comment coming through. I saw it in the room. Okay. Schools should be also teaching children what to expect in the world of work, particularly in the 4th and 5th form. Example, having to pay NIC contributions, tax deductions, vehicles need to be insured, etc. Some of them have no idea what to expect when they are sent into the world of work.
The person who brought up the thing about financial, that's all part of it, you know,
Yeah.
dealing with money. So that's a good point. That's the kind of thing that they're not taught. I mean, they're very correct. And I'm telling you, money management, earning a salary, dealing with savings and dealing with expenditure and all these things that the person just mentioned should be part of a full-fledged program. And I agree with that. And it's becoming more and more necessary.
Okay. All right. And the comment further goes on to say, thank you, Mr. Brian and Mr. Seon and all others responsible for this call tonight. We need more forums like these for our boys and our men. All right.
Yeah, thank Mr. Brian for that.
Yes, it has definitely been my pleasure to have Mr. Seon on board to really talk about this. Okay, so I'm in the process of opening up a phone line because we have some people who want to call directly and make their contribution. So just give me 1 second for all of you who want to call directly. But meanwhile, we have the Zoom room open. So if you can join in on the Zoom link, then you can make your contribution a bit faster while we try to more or less open up the line. So I will post the comment for the link for the Zoom room in the Facebook feed. All right, and you can just join in on there and feel free to make your contribution. We have another comment coming from Mr. Denver Pierre.
Denver.
Yes.
That your year again?
No,
man. Denver must older than you, man.
Denver actually came to teach us in Form 3.
He came to teach for a short while. Yes.
So he's saying, big up the best principal, always seeing the best in you, GOAT, greatest of all time.
Oh, Lord. Denver, don't worry about Denver. You know, Denver is partially a man of the cloth. Siobhan, you know that? He's spiritually inclined.
Yes, yes, he is.
I wouldn't say he's a pastor, but I know he's always has an important message for the young people as well.
All right. So you can, all right. So I see he's trying to call me. Okay, go ahead and call me and I will try to put you on the feed.
That's Denver?
Yeah.
Okay. Photographer as well.
Back.
Where is it? Good night, Denver Pierre. How are you?
I would say that Mr. Seon had a very, very positive impact on my life, meaning you never know what somebody is going through, you never know what home they come from. But one thing about Mr. Seon, always saw the best in someone, and he probably didn't know that he had that impact on my life, but I just wanted to make it public, you know, how he impacted my life and how he encouraged me. And, you know, it's just a blessing. He's a real father and a blessing to everybody he meets. So I thank God for him. That's all I want to say. And good job, Siobhan.
Oh, Denver Pierre, what happened? You sound like you're delivering a eulogy, man. I'm still alive, you know.
All right, thank you very much.
Oh, no. Thanks for getting that positive words from you. It means a lot coming from you anyway. I know you have a good connection with up there. So put in a good word for me. All right. Okay, my bro.
Have a good night.
Yes, sir. You too.
All right, thank you very much, Denver Pierre, for calling in and making your contributions. Okay, we have some comments coming in from the Facebook feed. Mr. Junior Delisi says, though it takes a village to raise a child, a father needs to accept his responsibility in that village. Mothers are now forced to look for support from other village members who may also need to focus on their own homes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's valid too.
So that basically speaks to the reality of extended families, and sometimes even though the job can be done, it may be a lot of pressure having to step in areas where, as we know, could more or less be fluent if we do our part. Okay, let me see what else. Okay, all right. So we have total support coming on. To make your contribution, you can go ahead and unmute your mic.
Total support, go ahead.
Hello.
Yes,
good night. Yes, we can hear you.
Hello. Good night. Thank you so much for the forum for tonight. And my dog finally kept quiet. So I just wanted to make the comments regarding the mothers raising the sons. Yes, a lot of mothers, they don't have a choice and stuff like that. But what I'm trying to say is that I was raised in a single parent household, my brother as well. And although my mom did do a great job, but he lacked the father figure and the male figure in his life, because even when I speak to him as an adult, he has a son, and what he went through, he doesn't want his son going through these things. So there are certain times he needed that support from the male, and he did not get it, regardless of what a great job the female was. And also, if you look at it realistically, a man has a penis, so does a boy. So a man would be the best person to show a boy how to wash his penis properly, regardless of the fact that, yes, a woman can do that. I'm not disputing that. But so basically, we each have our roles to play as mothers and fathers in society. But unfortunately, we have a society that is more or less women are the ones ruling. Because because by virtue of the fact that we carry the babies.
Yeah.
So, and I also just wanted to say that also in terms of the teaching them the financial education, I think that a lot more should be done in terms of that part. Okay, and also teaching our children not just to work for somebody, but being entrepreneurs. Thank you.
Yeah, it's strange that this is something I'm hearing more and more of late, you know. Strange enough, when I was there, I wasn't getting that sort of feedback from parents that they needed that. But since I left the school, a lot of talk about financial education is coming up. As if, I don't know if it's a COVID thing or what, but it really is coming up, and that's the third person talking about it tonight. And it's pretty obvious that we were not taught too much of that, because, you know, solutions, the first thing they do when they get money is to go to a party and spend it as soon as possible. And that's the culture that we have to deal with, you know, and the other places seem to have had that covered, but we may not there at all.
Yeah. Well, definitely financial literacy is something that some of us, we only learn the hard way, unfortunately, when everything comes against the wall and we're challenged. So we have another comment coming from the Facebook audience by Mr. Andre Gill. I always think mentorship is the key to a well-rounded individual outside of having conversations, and those who actively in groups with a strong mentorship program. Our people are lost, not just men. We also need virtuous women and leadership in our men to have a well-rounded society.
Clearly, yeah. But the mentorship programs, we've had them at the school, and it's difficult for some reason to maintain them. You know, it's a sad thing, but the men who have the most to offer and who want to come are the busiest ones otherwise.
Yeah.
So they come once and they come twice, and then the program kind of falls apart for a while. And then they come again 2 or 4 or 5 months later. It's not something that you necessarily can have all the time, but he's right. They need as much as that as you can. And it's just that for those who have something to offer, to make themselves available all the time can be a problem.
Okay. All right, I see we have a mic open. Melissa Avril, go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. I guess it was open in error.
Accidentally.
Yes. So definitely we had a very insightful discussion this evening. And of course, we still have room for a few more comments before we wrap up this evening. Yes. And I see there's been lots of engagement. I think when you made your suggestion regarding the involvement of experienced professionals.
man.
Someone tagged the ministry, so we'll see where that goes.
That's a shame, man, that we have people who can contribute.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know. I've said this to them already, and they haven't been taken up. I don't want to suggest why, because it may be wrong, but I wish they would take up the offer.
I think personally there's been quite a bit of challenges with the education system, and especially when it comes to mental health. Because one of the things that I noted in 2020, which you touched on, was the idea of having one counselor per district, and in some
school, that's a problem in some districts, even in Castries, where you have the bigger schools. It's still a problem because you have one counselor per school. And one counselor per school is just inadequate.
That's impractical.
Especially when you have the other methods of handling students being taken away from you. You know, I think we spoke about the corporal punishment thing. And we're just following the guidelines, quote unquote. I would say more like the instructions of these UN bodies and these UNESCO and these people doing what they say. But we don't have the wherewithal to run our schools. Otherwise, there are no safety nets. You see? You take away one thing, you should have something else in its place. Nothing there.
Ideally, that's how it should be run. Okay. I saw a mic unmuted a while ago, but I see. All right. So we had a very, very insightful discussion this evening.
Wrapping up.
And well, actually, we have comments coming in as we speak. Go ahead, Mr. Adaya Bernard.
Hi, good evening. Very interesting session this evening. I am enjoying it quite a bit. What I wanted to actually just add, we seem very focused on government institutions or government bodies getting involved. But I think somewhere we could actually focus on citizens actually coming together and forming groups that can actually provide the kind of support that the government seems a bit reluctant or a bit slow in actually offering. I think in most countries, we have a lot of men-based groups coming together, or men, like-minded men coming together to provide the kind of support that is needed, especially where the government is not stepping in. It's difficult with limited resources, I believe, for the government to step into every area. And if we as men can identify those areas, even just simple mentorship, we do not necessarily need the government to come in and say, okay, you can be a mentor. We might have young men on the block that we can reach. We might have young men at the workplace that we can reach. We might have young men that we just interact with, whether it's at the village level or just seeing them around. We can begin the engagement. And if we want to formalize it, form groups where we could actually reach out to the young males and the young men amongst us. To wait for the government to intervene, sometimes it might never come. So I believe we can actually begin the process, come together and begin to mobilize and reach the young men in our society. Thank you.
Valid, very, very valid. We've had a few efforts like that. I know the Dr. King had this group to Rise. That was exactly what they were trying to do. It still exists. I don't know how vibrant they've been lately because I haven't been hearing too much about it. But that's the kind of organization you're referring to, where people don't necessarily wait for minister of this and minister of that to step in. But there also is a responsibility, I think, for the minister of this and minister of that to try to reach out and utilize the services, because some people figure they have no authority to just go and tell people by the side of the road anything. It's not always. Or religious groups can do it in a way because of the established at that level. But I don't think random people would feel comfortable just getting involved in that. No authority from anybody. That kind of thing.
And it's very interesting you speak about authority. What has your experience been like, for example, with parent-teacher associations in terms of maybe there actually being a situation where the PTA or the head of the PTA comes to you, recognize a certain pattern of behavior and says, okay, this is a problem. Like how did you as an administrator navigate such situations?
That's good. There were situations that required PTA involvement. I remember when we were having some issues with boys loitering around town. I mean, really clamped down on it. And I mean, I used to personally go around town to chase them. I got full support from parents. Oh yeah, you're laughing?
Oh, the candy shop block.
The candy shop. Oh yes, I used to be right there by these candy shop boys, physically chasing them to their homes. And I used to get the support. There was one time a group of 4 parents actually heard I was there and they came and joined me and helped clean out the boys from there. And it kind of died away for a while. But it's something you have to do actively. And I never really had, I must admit, maybe I was a little lucky, but resistance from parents at the school, you know. They always seem to understand what it's doing. They always figured, I guess, it was in the best interest of the boys. So they encourage what I was doing. And I PTAs who, you know, for fundraising, usually not so much for that kind of corrective measure. Yeah. So I must say that but parents generally, I think most parents of most students would respect an administration that they see is deliberately trying to do the best for the child. You know, even if they may not agree with what you're doing, but if they think it's ultimately for the child's benefit, they may disagree with the immediacy of it, but the long-term benefits they'll see. And that's the thing I deal to. A lot of boys who meet me and who are angry with me at school for what I may have done at the time, meet me now and tell me how they understand. And some of them, a little embarrassing, some of them come hugging me and things like that. But I get it all the time. And they recognize, they send their boys, their own sons to the school, and they say they hope that their son gets treated in the same manner that they were treated, because they realize the benefits of it. You see, so that kind of thing is what it's about.
All right. So we're gonna have one more contribution from Lynette. So go ahead, make your contribution. You have to unmute, please.
I was following up on the last caller's suggestion about not waiting for government. And I kind of agree with that, because I think sometimes the past principles, like Rowan, yourself, and the other principles you mentioned, could come and form something like a Big Brothers Association, where difficult students in the schools could be referred to you, right? Referred to you rather than caning them. They could probably be referred to your group for some sort of mentorship and some sort of behavioral guidance that will encourage them to remain in school, and so that you can effectively use all your years of experience dealing with students who fall by the wayside and support them in that way. And I think sometimes once the government sees that this is really going in a good direction, they may turn around and support you. So I definitely agree that sometimes the impetus could come from people who have been involved and who know the system, and you guys could get together and support the schools, support the college, support the teachers. Almost, I'm not saying you have to act like counselors, because you're probably even more experienced than the counselors, because you know the behavior and you know the boys. So I think that was a very valid point that the last caller made, and something that you all should look at collectively and see how you can support the students, because you guys have the students at heart. You all are invested in this thing. The government and the ministry is probably not necessarily invested, because they're not as involved as you have been, and you still are, which is a fantastic thing. So maybe you can use that and help to support the schools in some form or fashion.
Yeah, Yeah, that's valid. I have made attempts occasionally to
Keep at it. Keep at it.
Don't
give up.
You don't want to appear to be, barging into principals' operations and making it look as if they don't know what they're doing or anything like that.
Well,
but I was thinking that if it is something that comes from the ministry, then we have more, as I said, authority to do something rather than just on our own calling a principal and suggesting something. But you're right. That can happen. That can happen. Maybe that's one way it can go. But I would prefer to be officially authorized, and then you would be more comfortable speaking to a principal from that angle rather than as a personal thing. I don't know. I'm thinking about how I would have felt if somebody called me and advised me how to run the school. And it's not somebody who has any authority kind of thing. They don't necessarily look kindly at your, intervention into the school operation. Because I get what you know, but I'm not saying you have to be kind of ticklish. It might be a little uncomfortable for some people.
Yeah, but it can be done. It can be done. If you guys put your 100 years of experience together and work together, it can be done in an effective way, and it can be done, for the benefit of the students, and that's what this is all about: supporting your schools and about the students.
But the point, yeah, but I was just saying that many, the United States, you have what these think tanks. Think tanks are groups of people who are put together by the president or whoever as consultants, kind of thing. And you don't have to, I'm not talking about anything that they're going to pay us for, but officially it can be announced by the minister that this group has been authorized to provide guidance. They don't have to do anything beyond.
Well, get a proposal. Write a proposal and send it to the government. Write a proposal. I think if we make excuses, it's never going to happen.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, thanks very much.
Write a proposal, send it to them, and see what happens. But it's a shame, as you quite rightly said, that all of you with so many years of experience and so much to give, that experience is just not being utilized effectively, and it's greatly needed. It's a situation that's needs to be corrected, because we're losing young people every day because of them falling by the wayside, as you quite rightly said.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Lynette, for again your wonderful contribution. I see we had one more person try to unmute just before we were wrapping up. Samsung, go ahead. Go on.
Good evening. Good evening, Mr. Seon.
Hi, good evening.
This is Dr. Andrew Matthew on here.
Andrew, I said my brother. Class of you have to identify your
95.
95.
Yeah, I must say it's been a pleasure watching and listening to you, Mr. Seon. You may not be totally aware, but you were my favorite teacher by far, I must say it was because of your style of teaching, your zeal. I think I picked up one or two.
Andrew, you say that to...
Sorry?
You probably say that to all the teachers.
No, to you alone. Honestly, I think it's the first time I've actually commented about the teacher, And I was about to say that I've done a little bit of lecturing myself, and I'm wondering now that maybe I've picked up a couple of words lecturing because I've stolen that zeal from you. I think I also teach with the same the same energy. But it's been a pleasure. You've brought up several important issues, Mr. Seon, that I think we need to continue discussing. The last issue that keeps coming back there, you've reiterated several times, is the issue of whether or not persons like yourself, Mr. Fenelon, Ms. Pascal, all these teachers, Mr. Rupert Ellis, all these principals who have learned so much, these lessons learned, that experience could not benefit the Ministry of Education. And I'm wondering whether the same would apply to the Minister for National Security, whether he shouldn't be considering pulling on board former police commissioners, you know, Mr. Vernon Francois, Mr. Severin Mosheri, Mr. Daisy, all of them would have served at moments that would have been critical or different, and I believe would have learned lessons that right now would benefit the Ministry for National Security, benefit the current commissioner. I also wanted to just comment quickly about the issue of persons referring to things as colonial, rules as colonial. I think your point is a valid point, Mr. Seon, in that we don't need to reinvent the wheel, is how I put it. These European powers would have spent millennia learning many things, and over that time, they would have consolidated their knowledge, and they would have been able to document what they learned over several attempts at formulating, or several attempts at developing, and really and truly we're benefiting from what they've learned. And like the wheel, we don't need to reinvent it. But I also took your point very well, that we don't simply need to take it and apply it as they do it and apply it in their own jurisdiction. We can fine-tune it to us. So when you spoke about corporal punishment, I think your point is valid. Maybe corporal punishment would not be applicable for us, because you tell a child in our jurisdiction that you're going to lock them into a room and ground them, and that may be actually something that they will see as, well, thank you, I'm going to be in my room with my computer for the next 10 hours. That's not a punishment. But the last point, Mr. Seon, that I actually want to leave as a question is in reference to whether or not we would truly need to see corporal punishment, and you referenced capital punishment as well, as options, unless they were the very last option. So I'll just make reference to one specific example. Capital punishment, in the case of Rwanda, could have been used after the genocide. But I was speaking with a nun today from Rwanda who shared that instead of applying capital punishment to the perpetrators of the genocide, what they did was put the responsibility on these gentlemen to take care of the families of their own victims. So they kept them alive, and they told them, you know what you're going to do? Now you're going to feed the children and the mothers and the fathers of these people who were killed. Those circumstances in which it was applicable. So I'm thinking, if we use a similar thinking for capital punishment, that instead of thinking, well, somebody did something which was heinous and we're going to take their life, what if we considered the possibility of allowing them to actually make up for what they've done by taking care, take up the responsibility of the people who are now going to be at the loss of a father, now going to be at the loss of a son. Do we find a system to put that responsibility on their back for as long as we would decide? And can we not get other options similarly for corporal punishment, instead of saying, well, a child would have used obscene language or profanity in class, instead of giving them the cane, 6 strokes, would it have been an option to ask them to go back to that same class and actually say, well, miss or sir, please, I'm sorry, I should not have disrespected you. Is there a possibility for a middle ground, is where I'm going to leave the conversation. And leave, yes, as you say, there may be circumstances when corporal punishment, capital punishment are absolutely necessary, so we keep it on the books. But can we not try to formulate middle ground and strategies that could be applied so that we don't have to use those extremes? Thank you, Mr. Seon. It's a pleasure.
strategies. Yeah, I take your point, and excellent, and I like the Rwanda thing as well. But like you said, the creativity is what it's going to call for, and I, you know, it is something that we gonna really have to look deep into. I still think that these young men who perform and engage in behaviors that they know is absolutely wrong and do it anyway may not respond to anything other than immediacy, short-term immediacy, and they will still apologize to the teacher and they still apologize to the class. That's necessary too. But then I've seen that kind of behavior so many times, and it seemed to have helped. It seemed to have worked. I don't know why we think that is the end of the world if you give somebody 3 or 4 strokes and then they go back to the class. You go back to the class and apologize as well. It's you know, and the reason why I'm saying that is because you don't want them to just apologize and think, well, you can do anything and then apologize for it afterwards. There has to be a consequence for the misbehavior. Apologizing is still a requirement, but it doesn't preclude the punishment aspect of it. Because otherwise you won't change. There has to be something to cause a change in your behavior. And that's why I believe a lot of the young men on the street now were never given the reason to change their behavior. And it has deteriorated further. They don't start like that. They start with little things and it gets worse. And I feel strongly about that. There's a lot of 18-year-olds out there who were fine when they were 10 and 11. They were not born bad. Their little habits got worse and worse because they never corrected. You see, and if we can check them earlier, they will not get to the total chaos that they become when they're 19 and 20. That's the way I see it, and it may not be the total solution to all the problems, but it can certainly help alleviate the situation that the society has found itself in now, because you really get into an extreme level of misbehavior when we have people being shot in the broad daylight in the middle of town.
All right. Well, good question, good contribution by our last caller. All right. I think we have Miss Alexandra. Go ahead, Alexandra. Make your contribution.
Hi, good night. I was saying that I know we pressed for time, but since you already called me, I will contribute. Good night, Mr. Seon. Yes, Alexandra 𝐒𝐲. I was once your chemistry student.
Wow, wonderful. See our female figures.
Yes. So I just wanted to drive home that point Mr. Seon made when he spoke of the relevance of men in the home, because I have experienced it for myself. I was raised in a single home, a parent with my mother. And while she had girls, I saw her struggle trying to understand, the changes we were going through. She didn't have that herself. But I have had 2 boys and I'm a single parent. And my first son, I struggle in understanding his changes. Now with my second son, I am seeing the need for a father figure. And so I have tried my best to ensure that the male persons in his life are influential persons to guide him. Because there are some questions my older son used to ask, and I really couldn't answer. And what I really want to link it with is my job. I see a lot of men at my clinic, and I try my best to make men a priority because, a lot of men, they don't really like coming out. So I reach out. When I go to the homes, I encourage them to come. And one of the things they always say to me, nurse, we have too many women taking care of men. Because there are times they ask me a question, or I cannot answer, or I just cannot identify with the complaints, some of the complaints that they come with. Some ways they feel I cannot understand. And then I see the need for more men in the healthcare environment. There was, I think they want to try to bring some men's health on stream where we have clinics for men island-wide. And I was happy to hear that because most times I did mental health clinic, I felt limited. And I always had to refer them to a medical officer, male medical officer, because some of the things they told me, I just couldn't identify. And we just see the lack from young, even now when we're now in my workplace, I could identify that I cannot understand what a man or a boy, how they feel. I cannot relate to it. So a lot of women who always say that they're the father and the mother, we could never be the father. I could never be. And because of my experience, I know I could never be a father to my sons. And for that, even I just want to link, because it came in my mind, to my mind earlier, with the counselors at the school. A lot of the counselors are women, and they have to deal with boys and girls. Their way of handling situations is different to a man's counsel. I remember I was troublesome, growing up. And there was a particular teacher, Mr. 𝐒𝐬𝐧. He used to tell me, Alex, ladies must be seen and not heard. And he was always at me. I think he knew I was from a single parent. Even Mr. Joseph, they always tried their best to, put in a little word whenever they came in contact with me. And it really helped me because I was getting a male perspective of how I carry myself, my deportment as a woman. And from what my mother would tell me, or maybe females would tell me, it was different. And I listened to the males. So more men being in the forefront, leading. I think that our men are too laid back. They're taking a backseat because women are more educated. When I say more educated, but they're educating themselves. They're finding themselves in positions, at a higher levels. So you find those persons are dominating, and the men are at the back, they're taking a backseat. So we don't have the input in a lot of things. And I think that the men should really come forward. I'm happy with that show. Siobhan, as the first time I'm tuning in. And I think I will really share that link with most of the men I know, because I think that their contribution will really make a difference. And I could bring it back to my workplace. I could use it as a mother and share it with other single mothers in terms of how we could raise our boys. Thank you. That's my contribution.
Wonderful. And then I say nothing more because you've made a lot of important points there, and we're very clear in what you're saying.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Alexandra, for the feedback. Of course, it's very encouraging, and I will do my best to get the message across. And just before we wrap up, I see we have one more comment.
Oh, right. Okay, that's good.
Bernice Brian Alexander. It's my mom.
Oh, okay.
Yes, she said, very enlightening and informative discussion. Mr. Seon, I thank you for the guidance for the young men who were under your tenure as principal, and they have turned out to be outstanding citizens in society. Hats off to you, sir.
Thank you very much, ma'am. And Siobhan is right here as evidence of what you're saying, I'm sure.
Of course, and I must go ahead.
I was just saying that how pleased I was to respond to this, because you asked me to.
Yes.
And I mean,
I'm very grateful that you accepted the invitation. Trust me, but words cannot express. But of course, I'm happy that many of our viewers this evening were able to render the love and support that you have expressed to us indirectly and directly as principal. And this here is the close of our session. And before we close, I would like to ask you, Mr. Seon, your final thoughts that you'd like to share with everyone.
Yeah, final thoughts is to thank you, Siobhan. I'm honored to do this. I met your lovely wife and all that, and this is a wonderful, and I'm very happy to see the link the two of you have and how you work together to make this whole activity possible. For those of you who don't know, his wife is right here. She's behind the scenes. They say behind every successful man is a powerful woman. This is a classic example of it. St. Joseph's Convent, I gather. It's not a bad thing at all. So I hope you can go from strength to strength, and you can continue the important outreach that you have here. This is amazing for such a young man to see the need for this in our society. You had a few more like you, St. Lucia would not be needing you in the first place, if you get my points.
Yes.
Right. Thank you very much for having me.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Seon, for gracing us with not just your presence, but your experience, your your pressing passion about many topics across education, across, you know, what the administrators can do, how we can help, and also how parents can play an important role in the lives of young men, and, you know, how we can just support each other generally. I must say it was enlightening as it was engaging. Many of the comments that came through full support of what you have expressed this evening, and I'm sure from this discussion there will be some sort of change. There will be. It's definitely a ripple effect, and I
hope so.
I'm just waiting to see.
I hope Mr. Sean Edwards calls me, the Minister of Education, sir, past student of St. Mary's College. We can do stuff to help the country use the services and resources you have available to you. I'm saying so again. Everybody tell him I said that.
All right, and we have the comment saying, make it happen. And of course, yes, we made it happen this evening. This was Management, the Empowering Men series. This was our flagship episode on mentors leading the next generation. And I think we really did justice this evening, talking from your experience as an educator, helping young men as far back as 37 years. In education, and wow, that's just so much. And we touched a little bit on the cultural aspect of it, and I'm hoping that maybe sometime again we can talk more about that.
Okay, sure.
You know, and yeah, definitely. My pleasure to have you. My pleasure to interview my former principal, and of course, my pleasure to have every audience member in Zoom and via Facebook tune in tonight. Post your questions and render your support. It has been a pleasure so far, and I see we have one more comment from Ron. He said, well done, Siobhan. Keep it up, bro. Ron Narcissus.
Oh, yes.
Narcissus.
Oh, yes.
Big up, Ron. Yes, and of course, I do want to thank everyone who tuned in. Thank you for your support. Thank you for being so engaging, enlightening, and most of all, encouraging throughout this session. This is Management, the Empowering Men series. Please stay tuned for more. We will be posting it on the Empowerment Project page, and of course, we'll be posting it on YouTube so that you can share with the audience. It was my pleasure, and on this note, I bid you a good evening. Continue, gentlemen, to build your legacy. Continue to show up for your offspring, your families. Continue to be role models in the household and outside of the household. Let's just work towards being better men, being solid men, and contributing to society alongside our women to make a more balanced society. It's my pleasure being your host this evening. Have a good night all.
There you go. Well done. Good job.